get started here. It's 5/11/2024, Infinite Plane Saturn Day, and I was just listening to an interesting podcast by Joseph Atwill, and uh, I think get the title of the podcast in case you want to look this up. And I'm not through with it all the way, but it's about Catcher in the Rye, the book by Salinger, and it's Jay Widener and Joseph Atwill, and they're discussing the Freemasonic subtext and how it's somewhat ominous in the way it's depicted in this book for what it suggests. But Widener is discussing how the catcher in the rye is referring to a scythe, like the reaper, and it's a reference to Saturn, in his view. Anyway, it's an interesting conversation because it shows how this book that was put into all these classrooms has some pretty blatant code that I didn't pick up on when I read it. It even has references to Albert Pike. It has, again, in the subtext, initiation, references to the Egyptians, all very occulted, but it's been decoded expertly by Joseph Atwill, and I'll do some additional research on it because it connects to some other interesting trails. Like, for example, John Lennon was assassinated, killed by Mark Chapman, who had a copy of the book. And the theory proposed by Widener is that this is a signal so that when an assassination happens, the people in the club know that it was a hit. And again, Mark Chapman had the book. They go down some interesting threads, but that's not the subject for today. It's just what I was immersing myself in before I came in here. And the topic tonight, or today rather, is related to the skies. Are these man-made auroras, HAARP? Now, this is something that's been tossed around. I've seen it a couple of times in our own servers, and there's an article about it now. Solar storm, or HAARP. Conspiracy theorists say man-made northern lights. Several conspiracy theorists in social media are now claiming that the auroras seen across Europe, North America, Australia, and New Zealand on Friday are man-made, the product of high-frequency active auroral research program HAARP testing. However, these claims were made without any evidence. The users on X platform known as Twitter cited a press release by the University of Alaska Fairbanks-based program which said it would be doing tests from May 8th to May 10th. Now, at the time of the publishing of this article, the website is down. But yes, it is true. The website did indeed say there is some ongoing HAARP testing. Now, we're looking at an interesting bit of correlation. Is this cause and effect, or is this just a coincidence? Well, it is a coincidence. The question is there more to it? It's an interesting and noteworthy coincidence. Like if someone had said, hey, look, HAARP's going to be cranked on this weekend, look to the north, and then we see the skies turning pink, we'd be like, okay, something's up. And I'd also like to point out the significance of pink, given Barbie and the whole Barbieheimer construct that we've been talking about, and the significance of pink within the occult. How it has a deeper meaning, which even connects to the newest Godzilla movie, interestingly. Ties into the pink soil tackifier used in Maui after those fires on 8/8, the day of the Lionsgate portal. Fascinating story here. We'll probably get into all of it, but the fact that the skies are pink right now is trending. And I have a number of pictures from people in my own family who have seen it, who are a little further north or higher up. I got a picture from 35,000 feet. So let's see what's going on in the comments sections. Matt X, let's go. Michael Cervantes says solar flares are fake. Clockwork 113 is here. HBIC from Twitch. We still have a number of Twitchers in here. Frank Murr, Pingu33, Pete Trippa, Reverse History, Elephant Tusk says bring up Brett Weinstein's article from 2021 with this exact date, 2024. Well, I did look, and I did find something about how HAARP can indeed create these types of effects. I also saw this other article, which I thought was the case, where apparently these large-scale greenhouse farming operations for tomatoes have these red LED lights. And when there's a lot of cloud coverage, the clouds may reflect it. And so you have these red skies in some parts of the UK. And so when I saw these pictures on Twitter, I was like, oh, it's just tomato farms. But I was wrong. Ollie Goering says there was a Japanese company that can simulate multicolored meteor showers. Maybe they can simulate auroras. Yeah, that's called Star Ale. The company in Japan, and I don't know if they're still available, but they supposedly do these simulated falling stars from space. Now you can believe it if you not or not. It's up to you if you want to believe the cause of it, but they do create these very spectacular effects. It's called space entertainment, sky canvas. Our technology turns dreams into reality with a team of experienced engineers, mechanics, software, space experts, satellites experts. It goes on through all the people involved, but their teams have developed, quote, two satellites which orbit in space, and it allows them to essentially target their light shows. I think you can just subtract the idea it's from space. It's probably a stratospheric balloon, or even just an airplane, a drone. But whatever it is, yes, they can simulate anything these days. And even if they can't, they can just fake it on TV and it has the same effect. Joined by Rome, Buzz Dean, Ted Stryker. All right, so Infinite Plane Saturday is usually a catch up day, but I think we're mostly caught up. I mean, we'll never be fully caught up, to be honest. Let's continue through the notes that I was on yesterday, see if we've missed anything. Okay, this is a good example of what I've been describing as visual illiteracy. So here's a video of a guy being chased by the police, or it's a car chase. And the individual in the black vehicle drives up a near vertical hill, and this is in California. Now, it looks real. It's just strange that it seems to defy gravity. It seems to just magically go up this near vertical incline. So, what explains this? So, I'm looking at the person who posted it, probably a blue check with 30,000 followers. Yeah, it's a blue check. And he says, this guy deserves to get away. If I were in a police vehicle, I would call off the chase. So I'm looking at it as, yeah, it looks real, but is that evidence that it is real, and especially right now? And the answer is no. But intelligently, he actually put in the very beginning here, he prefaced it with, if this is real. So at least he had the foresight to say, if this is real. He was open to the possibility it's not real. But he can't be faulted for not knowing the difference. Now, I was able to say it's fake. To me, it's fake until proven real, and it took me 2 seconds in the comments to find someone who could identify the video game it's from. But the point I wanted to make is that the increased difficulty of discerning real from fake constitutes a visual illiteracy. Society has been deliberately dumbed down with regard to video by design. Deeper into Plato's cave we go. And we're past the point of no return. I think that it's going to get progressively, I'm not going to say worse, but it's going to become more, the illusion is going to become more immersive. The situation is going to become less escapable. Now, I don't know if that's bad. I'm still trying to figure out, is this some kind of benevolent dictatorship? Do they mind control the masses for their own good? Would we be eating each other otherwise? And this last year has really given me pause to question if maybe it is for the better. Continuing, Elephant Tusk says the only way forward is not to play their game. Well, how do you opt out when everybody participates? Because the elite aren't just a small cabal on some island far away, but it's your next door neighbor. It's every single NPC Truman Show script following conformist around you. They are the carriers of the agendas. And ironically, so are the truthers, which is something we've covered quite a lot lately. There's real trouble in Trutherville. And I think one of the callers, it was Tim Truth last night, suggested that truthers are often worse off than the normies. And I'm reaching that same point. I'm going to play a short clip. Sovereign citizen loses his mind and gets arrested. The other night, a sovereign citizen called, and he said I was an embarrassment to, I guess, humanity because I have a driver's license and a license plate. It's like, how do I not get my car booted in the parking lot? They will lock my car down if it doesn't have proper registration and a license plate. But this internet tough guy, I'm sorry, but it's kind of a tough guy thing to say that, I'm going to stand up to the powers that be. But then in real life, he drives around with a license plate. It's a little hypocritical. Have to point it out. You can't call me embarrassing if you're a hypocrite. But he suggested you just rip off your license plate, get rid of your ID, and drive any speed you want. He even is cool with cussing in front of kids at children's birthday parties. It was a long conversation. Now, my point is, I found a video of a sovereign citizen doing what he said, claiming that I am not a slave. You can't pull me over. I just ruled this out as just a form of Karenism, road Karens. So this road Karen gets pulled over, or they're stopped by Border Patrol, and he tries to play the sovereign citizen game on them, and watch what happens.
And within the United States, I have a Fifth Amendment right not to answer any questions without a lawyer present. I'm invoking my Sixth Amendment right. Do whatever the you got to do. Guns drawn. Why are you fucking touching me?
So there you have it. Didn't end well. Drags out of his car. The video is sovereign citizen loses his mind and gets arrested by no-nonsense border agents. Try not to laugh. Now, again, what are you looking at here? You're looking at someone who's acting entitled. I've seen a lot of this, and I only brought this up because somebody said I need to start doing this. I need to behave in this manner. I'm driving too slow, apparently. And I asked him, do you wear a seatbelt? Because there are laws that say you have to wear a seatbelt. Anyway, old conversation. Sovereign citizen stuff never works. LOL, SovCit never works, says Tim Osman. Yeah, well, I want to see them try it. This guy calls me an embarrassment for not doing this, and I'm like, well, let's see you do it. Are you driving without a license? And no. All right, let's move on. That was nice to watch. It's called FAFO. Let's see here. We went through all this stuff. The Q nonsense, obviously. I think we're all sick and tired of it. I have Q fatigue. I have chemtrail fatigue, which is real. Chemtrail lung is fake. Chemtrail fatigue is real. I've been doing a deep dive into the whole chemtrail debunk, and this was sent to me by someone. We're going to do a debate soon. I'm not sure who's going to debate me. I don't think I'm going to get the debate I wanted with Jake the A, because of my recommendations for chemtrail activists. Apparently I went too far, which is rare. And it was kind of interesting that I finally went too far. And it was went too far in the opinion of somebody who has gone out into mass public events and had people line up and cough at his face to prove that he wasn't scared of the pandemic. So I thought if anybody would understand a little bit of parody that goes too far, it would be him. No big deal. I'll find someone else to debate. So if you want to debate me on chemtrails, you know where to find me. And I will accept any debate. I'd prefer to do it in person. If we can't do it on person, it has to be on video. There has to be accountability. I will not debate with anons. You have to have skin in the game. Now you can wear a mask. You can say, hey, I'm a chemtrail believer, so I got to wear a mask. And I'll respect that. But I think we should have your face, your skin in the game if you're going to stand by something. Because there has to be consequences for losing a debate. You have to lose bullet points, talking points, logical fallacies. We're deconstructing this thing, and if it is defensible, then I can be proven wrong, and I will become a chemtrail activist. I'll be more annoying than Greta. I will shut it all down. Just watch. But you got to convince me first. Okay, let's see here. Ollie Goering says, is sovereign citizen thingy an American thing? To a lesser extent, Australia? It's not a thing elsewhere, right? I hadn't thought about that. You just declare yourself king. Like, I'm the boss. And of course, I never see it turning out well. It's just being rude. And I don't think it's anything more, in my opinion, than a way of negatively attaching, or rather attaching some negative views against government to conspiracy theorists. Oh, you don't trust the news. You must be anti-government. And if they can brand you that way, well, now anytime you pull over somebody with an InfoWars bumper sticker, you got to have your guns drawn. The guy's going to be a Karen about it. He's going to resist. Nicotrama says, it would be epic if Richie from Boston debated you on chemtrails. Yeah, I would debate Richie from Boston. I would happily do it. Now, how? Hmm. How do we get his attention? How do we incentivize Richie from Boston? We just got to catch up with him. I will reach out to him, because I'm not here to ridicule believers. I'm here to deconstruct fallacious reasoning and then arriving at maybe some type of agreement on where we disagree and what needs to happen to prove the case to move this thing forward. But I think it's just been stagnant for too long, so hopefully he'd be willing to do so. And I won't crack jokes about him vaping in his Jeep while staring at the clouds, wondering if it's toxic. I won't even mention any of that. I won't talk about the idea that he proposed that the world was going to be shut down on April Fool's Day, the internet was going to go off, so hurry up and buy some of my storable food items. I won't even call him out on his grifting. I just want to talk about the facts. I watched this one, it was like a 6 hour chemtrail extravaganza with the director and creator of Frankenskies and Richie from Boston. And throughout this 6 hour video where they're talking about the Frankenskies and these bizarre concoctions of chemicals being dumped upon us, Richie's vaping, and the other guy is chain smoking Marlboros. I'm like, wow. Like, you're not going to be able to build a case for chemtrail lung with all that. G33 says we all go too far once in a while. Well, I'm not going too far accidentally. This is a trajectory. Like, we already kind of crossed that line. We're already too far. We exist in the land of far away from the perspective of Normieville. Continuing, Ollie Goering says chemtrail themed bar with chemtrail themed galaxy drinks. I don't know. Oh, I would host a chemtrail conference, but I would insist that nobody gets in unless they drive. Nobody's going to fly on a plane to my chemtrail conference. You're not going to be complicit in genocide. In fact, we will protest. Every person who knows about it will from then on vow never to fly again, to stop their families from flying. Silence is violence. If you don't stop your family from taking a family vacation, you're basically allowing them to be complicit in genocide. Oh, that could work. Peter Territory says debate Jake while he impersonates Richie from Boston. So if Jake can do a Richie from Boston for like an hour and debate the merits, I will do it. Okay, let's see here. Benton says, can you do the stream in RFB's voice? Look, no kidding. I really believed that RFB's voice was the result of not vocal fry, chemtrail. Like, I thought he was literally like inhaling a lot of barium and aluminum because every time I'd see him, he'd be out on the road somewhere and he'd be pulled over in his Jeep and he'd be looking at the clouds. And I thought, man, he's just going to where the poison is. He's going into the danger zone for us. And he's breathing this stuff in. And now I'm like thinking after some time, like, okay, I guess if you're just always ranting about the truth and inhaling these toxins, it's going to change your voice. You're going to get that bunker voice like Alex Jones. I don't have it yet. It could be psychosomatic. It could be a nocebo effect. Like if you truly believe in it, it could affect you. It's called nocebo. And these are well documented effects. I had someone on Twitter say that his stomach hurts. He gets a tummy ache when they spray him because we're bugs. It is a compelling theory because the elite do think we're bugs. I think they even said so in Three Body Problem. The aliens were like, you are bugs. But this person's complaining about their chemtrail-induced tummy ache on Twitter, and I'm like, you just caught some psychosomatic effects based on some truther pill. So who's to blame? The airlines or the truther who fed you that toxic red pill? Yep, red pills are toxic. Prove me wrong. Find one that isn't toxic. And even if it's not, the relationship of the pharmaceutical company to the dependent is a toxic relationship in this case. Joined by Mom with Sons. Thank you for joining. Hope you had a happy birthday. Yesterday was 5/10, the birthday of every character in the movie Identity with John Cusack. Strange movie. I meant to go rewatch it just to see if there's any significance to May 10th, but it was like some serial killer, 12 people stranded in a hotel in Nevada, and they all have the same birthday. And I think the spoiler at the end, I don't want to ruin it for you, so I won't say, but I think it has to do with multiple personalities or something. G33 says, I always heard AJ smoked a lot to get that gravelly voice. I think it was coaching by WWF acting coaches. I truly believe that. I made that connection when I first started listening. I noticed this change and I caught him off character once. I truly believe it's a character voice. And it works though. It sells the message perfectly. I mean, what a distinction from the slick mainstream media to this rough, kind of angry voice at times, sometimes hysterical, very passionate. I mean, look, he is obviously one of the greatest broadcasters in that genre, in this arena, and one of the greatest psyop operatives, and probably relishes in that position. But the idea that he's truly fighting against the system, the New World Order, like that's such theatrics at this point. It's WWE. Matt Everywhere says, Tim, I know your opinion about the V, but my question is, would you consider they do affect your immune system? Could it be a cause of? No, I don't think so. Not at all. In fact, I think it's all psyop. I truly do. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be a partisan decision. So no, I mean I've considered it, but I have no evidence for it. And look, I took dozens of these different types of things when I was in the military. I've been vaxxed against anthrax like 6 times, and I'm fine. Nicotrauma says RFB is a federal agent, no doubt about it. You know, there are people want to dismiss this, but there are federal agents, there are informants all over the place. And when I mean all over the place, all over Trutherville, it's crawling with them, always has been. You got to look at Miragemen, newsbenders and Miragemen. By the way, I have some really good news with regard to the lawsuit, and it's thanks to a glitch. It's one of these weird glitches, coincidence. I got lucky because I was not 100% clear on my 7 causes of action how the crimes I'm alleging against Goldfinch should necessarily result in the same being alleged against Google. Now, Google tried to worm their way out of it with the dismissal, but they weren't able to get in touch with me. And in the laws of the code, according to the way they process these things in the Superior Court of California, the defendant and the plaintiff have to confer with one another before submitting these motions. Well, they couldn't confer with me because my email was down. My email was down because I failed to pay for one of my domains. I let it go. So I forgot about it. So I missed this email, and this meant that their motion didn't stick. It's sustained, but now I have 10 days to amend my complaint. And I was given a detailed list of what I need to do in order to have this thing properly processed. Really nice breakdown of everything that I need to do. So it's almost like when you submit a research paper and then your teacher does some red check marks on things that you need to fix and then you resubmit it. So it's almost like I've been given an opportunity, a 10-day window to proffer a final draft on my complaint. And I wouldn't have had that if it weren't for my email expiring. I would have just, it would have been, I would have lost a lot of time. So in the next 10 days, I will be pulling the trigger on a kill shot when I hit submit on this thing. So that's the good news. In 10 days, I will have an update. And then from there, the next update will be in July when I meet with Google, YouTube. And I'm also going to be at this time, by the way, the judge also specified that if I need the court's help to serve Goldfinch, I need to request it now. So they basically handed me, if you ask me, they handed me instructions on how to finalize this process because in my view I've already won. I mean I have. It's just a formality is what it comes down to. It's not like it's a question because what we have in this case is a confession, a statement of malicious intent and evidence. So no big deal. They helped me out. Now as far as what happens in between now and then, I'm working on a documentary to expose this person. Nicotrom says, super curious if MG ever communicated to you after he accidentally confessed to you in writing. Yeah, what happened is I tricked him. I used a little bit of phishing, social engineering, and the story will be in my documentary. I got him to send me the confessional. He thought I was somebody else. And then he sent the emails he sent to YouTube's legal department. Then he sent me a methodology on how he did it. He was really bragging. He even specifically called me. He said, "I'm going to get this person off of YouTube." He broke it all down. And at the end of this chain of emails, when I realized he wasn't going to send me anymore, I said something to him. I don't remember what. I'll bring it out. I let him know it wasn't the guy he thought it was. And after that, no, he ghosted me. And then he disappears, more or less. And then months later, he shows up as George News, and he's in the White House working for the White House press corps in the Trump administration. I wouldn't say working for, it's not like he needs an income. He's independently wealthy, but he's part of this operation. He's part of the Q operation. And that's really the biggest thing about it, is that this person who's part of the Q operation is going to be doxxed and exposed publicly, and his connection to the Hunter Biden hacking scandal will be revealed. Nicotrama says that's how low-level criminals get caught. They brag about their crimes. It's the dumbest move you could make. Absolutely. Look, the only reason I was able to dox him is he bragged about his money. In fact, he used to send me, because he would shut down my channels, cut off my funding, shut off our GoFundMes, and he'd send me pictures of the rims on his car. Like, this guy's weird. He bragged about his phones. He always has, the most up-to-date iteration on any of these phones, any of these devices. A lot of bragging. And one day he bragged about being on the board of directors of EAS Myoplex when it sold to Abbott. And it didn't take long for me to track him down with that little bit of information. And the only reason I got the information, though, and I did this intentionally, is I realized this guy's anonymous. He's hiding his identity, so I have to goad him into providing more intel. So many of my emails were intentionally meant to goad him, and I think I kind of triggered him a couple of times to where, he did have some kind of emotions attached to this thing, and he felt like it was a put down, I think, to kind of flex this way. So he brags about being part of this deal where Abbott Laboratory buys his company. He's on the board of directors, like 11 others, and this is all public information, $320 million. So I had to track down every person on this board of directors. I'm contacting people around him. And this is where I was just gathering intelligence on him. And I learned as much as I could before he scrubbed everything. I have a list of 150 of his clients in the UAE as a personal trainer. Like, he's not going to escape me. There's just no way. He was never going to. And in my view, he's done. And I'm prepared to roast him. And that's why we're doing this. I'm not even thinking about money, because even if I had Goldfinch money, I'd still be sitting here doing this. This is the mission. I'm doing this for the victory, and because we're hitting back at Mind Control Central. You have to think about YouTube and Google's role in running these psyops. They're part of it at the very top. It is all part of the mainstream media mind control infrastructure. So if we can hit back at Mind Control Central, embarrass them, and expose one of the agents of one of the top psyops of our time, to me, that's the win. We'll have an agent's head on a platter. We'll have embarrassed YouTube and Google into some kind of an apology. And then we can reallocate those resources that should have gone to us in the first place and invest them into the projects that we have been already putting so much time and energy into since 2017. We're going to catch up. Nico says, if MG offered you $1 million cash, would you drop it? No. No, we passed that point a long time ago. And what's more, it's not even an option. Settlement's not an option. When I talked to the FTC about whether or not this was identity theft, it was explained to me how this works. I called the FBI a lot. I talked to a lot of different people about this, many agencies, even one called IPR, like Intellectual Property Rights. There's some group out there, it's affiliated with the FTC, but my point is, I went through all this and I realized, okay, no, this is criminal. Generally, when someone does something criminal, they get charged first, convicted, and then you do the civil. But in this case, he's never been charged. And I'm hitting him with civil first. This is a civil unlimited, but it's going to lead to the criminal. So I'm doing it in reverse order. My point being, he could give me all the money that he has, and he's still going to have to face the state. He's still going to have to face the federal government for the crimes that he's committed. So no, there's no turning this thing back. And it wouldn't make sense anyway, because it's not like I'm being bought off. It's not like we're changing our trajectory at all. All right, let's see here. Dewis in Paris says, Happy Saturn Day. It's early here. Yep, exactly. Elephant Tusk says, Money won't mean a damn thing when it all goes to CBDC. Well, there's a lot of hopium out there for Nasara and Gasara in California. I mean, sorry, in Canada. Why do I always mix up Canada with California? Anyway, the queen of QAnon in Canada has been telling her followers to not pay their bills because there's going to be some kind of event and the deep state's going to be defeated and all of your bills are going to be covered. And so you have this problem where a lot of people are not paying their electric bills. Look, a mom stopped paying her bills because of QAnon Queen. Followers of QAnon Queen are facing mounting bill payments. This is what happens though when you have these people obsessed with the end of the world and then attached to it some kind of happy ending. This is why you have what I call doom hope. They hope for the end because they think they're cashing out. Nicotrama says, if you win the 5 million from the suit, what would you do with the money? Hopefully buy a truck with locking doors. Yeah, they stole one of my Bluetooth speakers the other day. What would I do with it? The next thing is to invest into the tabloid. The IPS has a corresponding tabloid just waiting here to be launched. The IPS Insider, and we have tons of reporters and a lot of stories to incentivize. And what we're going to do is create the same content we've always created. But we're not going to have any of the barriers and obstacles that we've had before. Ollie Goering says, MG work resume. Probably impressed the Trump, so he got to work with. Yeah, something happened. There's some connection with MG in his background. If you look, that may have scored him the gig with the Trumps, and a lot of it might be his movie background. He did special effects, or rather, he's a stuntman. He was the Red Power Ranger, stuntman in Xena the Warrior Princess. Did Fast and the Furious, interestingly, with Paul Walker. And that's an interesting connection. If you follow, Paul Walker is likely Tim Ballard. So you have this connection between Tim Ballard and the QAnon thing and Paul Walker and Goldfinch. Interesting connection there, a little trail. But his Hollywood background and then his brother worked directly for the late Pat Robertson at CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network. So we're talking mind control, top tier mind control operations. These movies like Fast and the Furious, King Kong, Lord of the Rings. He's in these movies, usually just as a stuntman or as an extra. Very few speaking roles that I can find. And his acting reel was almost in my possession, and they pulled it. They stopped me from getting it because I think he alerted them. But I was trying to get more information. But I think in some way here, he crossed with the reality TV star to become future president. There's some connection here. It has to do with Christian conservatism and mind control media. And then, of course, there may be some other elements to it as well. I think it has to do with, I don't know. I don't care to speculate too much more now. I want to get more information first. But I've looked into his background, and his brother's a very interesting character. But I'll leave it at that. I have a lot of leads that I've left untouched, and some I have looked into, but I realized if I trip the wrong wire, I don't want to close a lot of doors because there are people who are connected to him who I have reached before and just had simple communications. I had a program I was working on that I don't think it's something I should release without consulting a lawyer first, but it was a counter stalking manual. How do you dox a cyber stalker? How do you dox a troll? And in this, though, I came up with a number of methodologies for locating someone. And one of the ironies here is that you have someone whose job it is to be anonymous. He's a hacker, he's anonymous, he's a cyber criminal. He uses the Anon mask. He uses proxies and, all kinds of ways to conceal himself, right? But what exposes him? His family. Like you could be hiding behind all kinds of disguises, but then your Facebook is going to give you away. Your birthday, if you have your birthday on Facebook, you've already been probably looked at by identity theft, info harvesters. I mean, it's just that's how this world works these days. But yes, he screwed up. Very basic screw up there. If I was going to try to remain anonymous, I guess it's just maybe it was not maybe it's never been possible. Elephant Tusk says, Tim, do you think NASA does any legitimate research or is the entire agency just window dressing to conceal the fake space agenda? No, I would say 95% of it's probably real. A lot of their research is real. That's why the thing stays up, and it's just that one particular aspect of it is where it gets faked, but it has to be highly compartmentalized. You know, a lot of these guys are really scuba divers. They're real pilots. And then you can look at various examples of areas where maybe they have helped us or NASA has developed technologies because they've been given the money. Not that it makes it right. You know, robbing from the well-intentioned free marketplace where people are just voluntarily exchanging money for goods and services, and then the government just takes a chunk of it, which is theft in a way, and they put it into this program that if we knew what it was about, we wouldn't be giving them all those resources. So the fact that they give us Velcro and cordless drills doesn't quite make up for it for me. Like we wouldn't have figured that out anyway. Like NASA's like, yeah, we made up non-scratch lenses and all kinds of things they claim. Portal says, did anyone get footy of last night's solar storm extravaganza? Yes. I have a relative as a pilot. I got pictures of it at 35,000 feet, and I have a relative who's a little further north of me. I don't know what the official explanation is. I mean, if it's legit compared to the conspiratorial one that it's HAARP. That's what we're here to talk about. Did HAARP do it? HAARP is one of these things, kind of like geoengineering, kind of like chemtrails, where the truthers have their own definition of it, like their own version of it. Like, what does HAARP do? And it's largely, I think, like CERN. It's truther mythology. So here's the pictures that I have from New Mexico. Pink skies. I do find it to be conspicuously um, consistent with the significance of the color pink in all of the predictive programming that we've been analyzing for the last year. Mike Rothschild says QAnon believers are so desperate for proof that they haven't been wasting their lives that they decided that Q referenced a sky event in a Q drop on 5/10/2018, and that this was always going to be a reference to the Northern Lights of 5/10/2024. So you have a lot of people claiming that Q predicted this 6 years ago. Dr. Russell McGregor, quote, exactly 6 years ago, 6-year delta of sky event. I hesitated to post it, but it's too tempting. The deep state should just surrender. And he has the attached Q drop that shows you that and look, there are more Q drops than there are Bible verses. It's sort of like the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. This has been used to describe Nostradamus prophecies. There's just so much gibberish that you can connect it and make a sentence and make sense out of anything at some point just by randomly grabbing stuff or by cherry picking, which is what they're doing. So they cherry picked through all the Q drops and they found something that aligned. 17 Absolute Redux 76 says, I'm finding it hard to believe that a Q drop from 6 years ago, which said, quote, sky event, is a dead ringer delta for the northern lights basically being seen on the entire planet. It cannot be a coincidence. I'm not saying Q or white hats. Well, then what are you saying? You're not saying Q or white hats. I see some commenters here. Wired Dave says, is QAnon still a thing? Surely not. Oh, it's bigger than ever. It's not going to go away. What it truly is, we're talking about an umbrella conspiracy theory that represents a new iteration of the old body of conspiracy theories. There's a whole canon of conspiracy myths, literature, and concepts that are constantly being recycled. You can look back to the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, which is a joke, it's a hoax, it's obviously it's phony, but it's been repackaged in a million different ways, and it always resurfaces, and you can switch things out. Sometimes it's reptilians, sometimes it's the deep state, sometimes it's Jews, but these are old stories. And QAnon is not going to go away because it's become a catch-all phrase for conspiracy theories. And obviously, it's a blackwash. It's meant to destroy the integrity of any kind of criticism of mainstream media. Catching up on your comments here. G33 says Q, the reddest of the herrings. Well, Q does exist, and what it proves here is that the I think what it demonstrates, at least with what our understanding shows, is that the fringes are being target marketed with ideas that are ultimately meant to lead them into the mainstream of politics. I think it's just a big net, but it's run from the White House. And it's an easy sale. You're selling a lot of people on a solution to the problems that they see. Like it's an easy sell. Like, oh, you're really worried about children being trafficked in tunnels and satanic cabals. Well, we can solve it. And when you finally have a president that believes you, now he doesn't have to say he believes you, but he does all the necessary dog whistles. He winks, he traces a Q in the air. And now it's like, wow, the conspiracies are real and he's going to fix it. It's dog whistling. It's political dog whistling. It's not new. It's very effective. Dwayne Garrett says the sky is pink every evening during parts of the sunset. Well, the thing is, my question is this. If this Q thing is so reliable and it's predictable and you can't deny it because there's so many things that come true, how come no one is able to say, hey everyone, heads up, on May 10th, there's going to be a sky event? You don't see this. Or these Gematria calculator crunchers. You don't see these calculator people typing up numbers and words and then saying, on May 10th, the sky is going to fall. Nobody predicted it. But they all pretended like they predicted the end of the world on the eclipse of 4/9/2024. And what happened with all those predictions? Did the world end on 4/9/2024? I don't think it did. Eddie F says, have you heard of the movie Surrogate with Willis, the actor from Die Hard? Oh, Bruce Willis? No, I have not. Bruce Willis was in the news recently for his cognitive issues, which may or may not be real, but he's the face of Armageddon, the movie where they have to blast the asteroid so it doesn't hit the Earth. And NASA had knocked a space rock out of orbit so it wouldn't hit us, and they were hyping that movie up at the time. So I was looking at that, and again, that's just more foreshadowing for what's to come. I think they're going to do that to Apophis, the planet killer that's supposed to take us out in 5 years. They're going to send some astronauts up there to blow it up. And if they have the special effects down, which they do, the public will believe it. It's sort of axiomatic to say, if they can fake it in the movies, they can fake it on the news. And if they can fake it on the news, people will believe it. Okay, so it's a clone movie. I'll check it out. Now, there's another Bruce Willis movie. I think it's called Mercury Rising. Is that the one? Yeah. Okay, so Mercury Rising. This one's interesting. I talked about this one before, and I haven't seen it, but it's all about how it's about this 9-year-old autistic boy who cracks government codes, and the most advanced code is called Mercury, and he cracks it. Now, the actor who plays this 9-year-old kid is the same one from Pet Sematary. Gage, the creepy kid who rises from the dead. Anyway, his name is Miko Hughes. So Miko Hughes is in a Bruce Willis movie from 1998 about cracking codes. Now, interestingly, Mercury Rising is the title of this movie, and it pertains to 9/11. On 9/11, at 8:46 a.m., Mercury was rising, at the moment that the plane hit the building. So at the moment the plane hit the building, Miko Hughes's dad, according to his bio, was killed in one of the World Trade Towers. So he's in the trade tower, he gets killed when the plane hits at the moment of Mercury Rising. He's in a movie, Mercury Rising, about this kid who cracks codes. And then, of course, you have Bruce Willis, who's attached to all kinds of exploding planes and buildings. It's just part of his whole uh, character and what he brings into it, all of his associations. But yeah, interesting connection here between the actor in this movie, Mercury Rising, the time Mercury rises, and the death of his own father. If you believe it, which I don't. Elephant Tusk says, it sucks that we were born in such an S world. Well, would you rather have been born at an earlier time? I see a lot of like neo-Ludditism among the right, freaking out about animatronics and AI. It's like, what would you rather have? Typewriters, fax machines, rotary phones, horse and buggy. There's this like knee-jerk reaction that you have to reject anything that's new, and that's just built into the paradigm with the trad right. But there's a point where it becomes self-defeating. And I don't believe that technology is savior in the way the left does, in the way they've been sold on it, but I don't worship it. It is their God. But I don't think this is a bad time to be alive. And I'm not going to apologize for my optimism. Like, standards of living have increased so much that the quality of life of someone who's, quote, lower or middle class is comparable to the highest standards of living achievable by the richest people 100 years ago. I mean, you might have a lot of the amenities and conveniences then, but you'd have to deal with servants, slow service. And you wouldn't have instantaneous connection to all forms of entertainment, culture, education, literature at your fingertips 24/7. Like, I don't, with a waterproof computer, I just, everything about this is just, to me, I'm like, this is something of a golden age if you ignore the cultural pessimism they inject into the thing. Okay, continuing. Eddie F says, why does technology always have to advance? I think it's mainly iterative. It's because of the marketplace and competition. It advances for all the right reasons. It improves would be a better word. It's a refining process. Like my mechanical pencils right now that I get from the Dollar Tree in 8 packs for $1 are far better than the mechanical pencils I used when I was in high school. I'm certain of it. And I'm just noticing here that there's this trickle down effect when it comes to technology that, is probably the reason why a lot of people want to come to advance, to America in particular. Like, I was living in El Paso when I was going to UTEP, and I remember when I would cross the border and walk through Juarez, Mexico, there's such a um, distinction there. It's a huge disparity. Like, the homeless people on one side all have tennis shoes and they're not emaciated. And on the other side, their feet are charcoal black from having been walking on the streets barefoot and they're just looking half dead everywhere. Huge difference. So, like, I mean, I understand you say the world's bad, and I can see that. It's not uniform. And we're certainly lucky if we're not in those circumstances. And it's bad enough without inventing fake bad stuff to be fussy about. I talked about this with Tim Truth last night. Just look at the surplus of time and attention, just cognitive surplus of people who are focused on being mad at cirrus clouds. Like, if you took that and you directed it to real world problems instead of grifters selling you on fear pills, I think you might do some good. Like, for all the bad mouthing that the right or the conspiracy types do about big pharma, which likely they deserve it, you never hear them talking about big red pill, because big red pill is distracting a lot of people from being a little more, I think, useful, if anything. If you really care about saving the world, that is. You're not going to save it by by tilting at windmills, which is what you're kind of doing. Alex Jones is like Don Quixote. He's fighting the New World Order It's like, no, you're really not. It's all in your head. Eddie F says, Les Luther says, most jobs are BS. We really don't need all the tech. Well, need and want. I mean, what really drives this thing? Ollie Goering says, I think MG will not let Tim and the Penguin Raft sail smooth. He's got connections, and he probably will go back to shutting the IPS down once his contract with the Trump QAnon thing is complete. Yeah. Hey, that's a very important point. There's a This is the book 48 Laws of Power, and I got to find the law here, where he talks about how when you put out a fire, it's he emphasizes that you have to put out the embers, completely put it out. I think I found it. Here it is. It's Law 28. If one ember is left alight, no matter how dimly it smolders, a fire will eventually break out. So a fire will eventually break out if you don't stamp it out to the very embers, and I'm very well aware of that. And I have that in mind. But what I plan on doing with regard to MG is weaponizing the Trump deranged against him. And there's a lot of them. There are a lot of journalists who will go to town against this guy who is in the White House press corps. You got a top tier QAnon operative in the White House, in their midst. You think they would want to know that they have this person who's clearly pushing some kind of uh, delusional psychopathic radical fringe cult thing? So I'm thinking, yeah, I can trigger some kind of a response. He'll have so many enemies that, and who knows what else. Look, I have a feeling that I'm not his only enemy. And once this all comes to light, we'll see. All right, phones are open 505 349 0420. Elephant Tusk says, the world was made to be full of abundance, but the controllers of the chessboard choose otherwise. Well, we have to focus too, not just on the cabal, the controllers, the small group at the top, but the fact that this is systemic. It's actually everywhere. Control freaks are everywhere. My war in life isn't with the cabal, it's with control freaks, at the personal level. Control freakism. Like the mind control is executed through the hive mind, those who have adopted it. It's like that movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Eddie F says, the tech is disconnecting us from people, which is the plan, just like the movie Surrogate with Bruce Willis, where, oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, interacting with people through the screen, and now they demonize more and more of the types of interactions we have. And we're given emojis, I guess, to convey what we mean. And I hate emojis. I mean, I don't mind emojis in live streams, but what I mean is like in communications on Twitter. Somebody just throws some smiley face, a thumbs up, an American flag, prayer hands, and they say, you go, bro, on some QAnon post. I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, if you're going to sit there and act out the emojis that you're posting, which I assume they're doing, what does it look like? Are you really smiling and drooling and clapping and praying? I don't think you are. So emojis are even fake, if you think about it. So it's a digital mask. Oh, this is how I'm emoting. Are you? I think you're hunched over your phone, like on a bus somewhere. I don't think you're really smiling and clapping. I mean, maybe people are legitimately posting emojis that correspond to their emotions, but I don't think so. I think emojis are actually replacing emotions for a lot of people. But as far as does it disconnect us, it depends on how you look at it. I was at a relative's house, grandmother turned 94, and I was just chatting, and then the phone rings, and with one button push, there's a speakerphone, and like eight of her grandchildren are singing her happy birthday. And these are all people from all over the place who wouldn't otherwise be there. So you can look at it as, oh, we're being disconnected. Well, do you really want to be disconnected, or do you want to lose the gains just because it's not perfect or because it has some bad uses? And I don't think so. I think the pros outweigh the cons. The unmediated mind says, "You go, bro. Happy face, thumbs up, American flag praying." Yeah, it's like they vomit these emojis out It's not even voice to text. They're just like it's just something. It's horrible. Like Diana South says, maybe the people really are rolling on the floor laughing. Okay, my phones are on. I just have to unmute the ringer so it's back on if you want to call in. We're talking about the pink skies. I started out talking about this catcher in the rye, and I'll retweet it. This was sent to me this morning by someone on Twitter. Really great discussion about how it's a secret society mafia type threat book. And what he means by that is that in the subtext, it suggests that the secret societies that run the place are killers. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, what's up, man?
Oh, hey, what's up, G33? How you doing? I want to mute your speaker.
You can hear me?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Yeah, I just had a couple thought patterns maybe I could throw out there for you.
Sure, sure. And are
Um,
there any pink skies where you're at, or are you not far enough north?
I was looking last night for the green ones.
Well, I'll check again tonight. But anyway, yeah, thought patterns. What are your thought patterns?
So, all right, I'll start off with the more relevant one right now. So I don't know if it was this week earlier or last week later in the week. They had that the agreement talks with Israel and Gaza, and they were talking about it with the feds. They were talking about it, press conference and stuff. And then, like right after, they closed off Rafah or whatever, and like started hitting it hard. Am I
Um,
am
I
I correct?
I didn't keep up. I haven't been following it that closely, but please continue.
I'm pretty sure that's what happened, right? So now I'm just thinking because I've talked to you about this before. Because my other topic is basically the same wheelhouse. Is the feudalism. You
Yeah.
know, like these people can't even leave,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
or they're either forced out, they can't leave. It's almost like it's not like purge, but it's almost like purge from the military. And it just got me thinking, man. Like, imagine if, like, because you were saying just a second ago, the the life we live here in America, I think what you were referencing, and it's pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not
And
uniformly,
I,
obviously, but it's a work in progress,
yeah,
I think.
no,
But
you were saying the difference with the, you know,
but let me add this though, because even though I am very optimistic and I am appreciative of what I have access to, what I can do, I am very aware. I'm very much aware of the fact that there seems to be an intent by the power elite to maintain a power disparity, and it's largely based on imposed ignorance. So it may be that maybe, just maybe, we're so close to becoming a problem that they're going to have to dumb us down again in a very significant way. And that's where I think this fall of the Tower of Babel comes into it. I think they may have to, WTC7 the whole operation in order to maintain that power
again.
disparity. Yeah, I think that could be the case.
Oh man, again, dude. I'm waiting for the again.
That's
But yeah,
that's
is
the
it going to
worst case.
affect us though?
Won't affect me. I mean, I won't be affected. It's like I put a 3 day hold.
We 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 build intelligence off of those operations, if I'm not mistaken, from the thought patterns that we gather here.
Absolutely. Every time they do a major psyop and they do a new trick, we learn something. We're expanding our body of knowledge, and I take 3 days at a minimum to analyze something before I commit to believing in it. And I never arrive at the conclusion that these things are real, but I might eventually if something is. My point being, let's say they nuke Seattle next month in 30 days. I'm gonna not I'm not gonna do anything other than research, read, and follow it, but I'm not gonna be buying a gas mask or iodine or locking down, or I'm not gonna be hitting the panic button. So no, there'll be no panic over here, no matter what they do.
I'm gonna be glad I'm not on the West Coast.
Right. Yeah. Look,
And
they can
then,
fake nukes, but you know what they don't have to fake? Panicked multitudes, angry mobs, people running to ransack toiletries from Walmart. So I was like, no, they don't have to
well, I
fake
think
that.
we've talked about this before too. They propagate their thought pattern and then hope that not we, but they uh, subscribe to it and then continue in into the objective that they want, like the reaction,
Yeah,
problem, reaction, solution.
the hive mind. They definitely have a transmittable hive mind where the people who have their head in the box operate predictably. They're within a certain closed system. Truthers are in a closed system, operate predictably, and same with the woke. So there's definitely the case that they can activate the hive mind with any of these psyops at any time, and that's the level of mind control. It's like, look how vulnerable we are to manipulation. Like I often reference the Truman Show. Well, if the script writer on the Truman Show decided to put monsters and total chaos and riots into that stage, Truman would have anxiety attacks and he'd go hide in his house because he didn't know the whole thing was fake. And I'm like, if you look at it from that perspective, they can sadistically throw in any element, and the panicked sheeple will just react like panicked sheeple. That's their main power.
Yeah, yeah, they got it mapped out pretty good, you know. Um, so yeah, so I was, the whole thing I brought up at first, right? You know, I think there's not much argument there, even though everybody kind of it touches lightly on that subject.
Well, I don't even
It's a
get it.
very divide.
I'm not.
It's a very dividing subject. I mean, they look at what's going on now with it, and then it's like and there's nothing new under the sun. They did that with the Vietnam conflict, right?
I don't know. I mean, you say right. I can't just reflexively agree because I'm not taking for granted the reality of anything that's been presented from the lens of the world stage's directors. And this has been going on since, at a very minimum, they hijacked our collective psyche with the advent of the nuke. So everything that's happened since then, I question everything. I
Well,
don't assume that there's
I
anything
agree,
that.
I agree with you. I agree with you, but I'll go many steps further. Is like the whole hijacking of collective consciousness goes back to Babylon. And I only say Babylon because that's as far as I can reference, uh, you know, uh, somewhat efficiently. And I'm not a anthropologist or nothing, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's all fake, but the stuff that I have seen seems pretty good as far as to subscribe to it. Like it goes that far back. This whole programming thing, however you want to, put forward your narrative as far as programming.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of what I described with the Greek historian Polybius, the instrumentum regni. This is this phrase coined by Tacitus, which suggested that in order to control the unruly mobs, it's necessary to use pageantry and fear of gods. So, what are we talking about? Religious theater, mind control, and psyops. They have been doing this from the very beginning. There has always been this elitist strategy to control the multitudes through mind war. And what we're experiencing now is just the newest iteration of this ancient practice, and it's standardized. This has never been not the case. You're right about that.
Yeah, so I'm going to move to my next topic, and then I just want a quick aside because you brought up theater, which I appreciate, because I just listened to something uh, from a little bit in the past from our brother Jordan Maxwell, rest in peace, and he was talking about theater and theology. And we all know he's into the words and this, what I mean? That's why I was loved about that guy.
Oh,
And
sure,
he was
sure.
saying how theology within the Greek language and theater, the I guess, and it makes sense to me. It's like the God, theology, theater, monotheism, polytheism. So so like theater, the stuff we break down in theology, like the old school, New World Order religion, it's one and the same. It's just opiate for the masses, in my opinion. And I'm just kind of like shooting from the hip here because you said that, and I heard that just the other day about that Jordan was saying, and that's just what you made me think of.
Interesting points there, and that makes a lot of sense. Like I was saying, we're all viewing the world through Big Brother's viewfinder. That's the part where the director puts their eye to the little square to see what eventually we're going to see on the screen. And if you look at it, they're playing God. And the theater is basically God's interpretation. It's their monopoly on worldview. And I would consider that the worldview monopoly is the new monotheism. So Jordan Maxwell is right on point with that. In many ways, I would say Jordan Maxwell woke me up in the sense that, people say Alex Jones woke me up. No, when I first looked into symbolism, it was Jordan Maxwell whose work was actually
Hmm.
appropriated for that Tom Hanks, Dan Brown, Da Vinci Club movie, where he's giving a lecture about iconography and Mary and Isis. So it was Jordan Maxwell who kind of clued me into this stuff about Saturn and the rulers of this place and El. So that's kind of what got my start. And I was listening to Jordan Maxwell, and I went to a courthouse, and he talked about how judges wear black because it's Saturn. So I'm in a courthouse here, and there's a big mural on the wall, and they have the quote magical squares of Saturn on the wall. And I didn't know what that was at the time, so I jotted it down, the numbers from the magical squares, and it's planetary magic. So in other words, I at the time I walked out thinking, I think this courthouse is some kind of temple to Saturn. And then I started looking at architecture in a whole new way and how cities are laid out because as Jordan Maxwell described, there is this cryptopsy that has been ruling forever and they have occulted their ways so that the normies can't see it.
Yeah, his whole thing with the language of the Holy See, or however it goes, I have a hard time really recalling all the data points, but he's like, dude, it's like it makes so much sense with the courts, the banks, the monetary system, the laws, all that Holy See language is like, it's like, wow, dude.
Yeah, that's all really interesting. I don't know 100% about how valid that much of that is, but one thing that's interesting about Jordan Maxwell, he said to me that I'll have to find the source of this, but he told me,
Well, it's the word, it's the words and everything, man. They're right there. Like you're saying, the court and like the Saturn. Yeah, it's and one of his big things was the astrotheology. It's all right there.
yeah,
It's not
that's
even a
that's
matter. I mean,
yeah, that's kind of what it is. In fact, one of his later speeches, talks he gave before he passed, was about the symbol of the sun and news being north, east, west, south, and that it's all coming from the avatar of the sun or Caesar, and that the news is ultimately an expression of the sun god or the elite. So he's done some incredible work with regard to breaking down this ancient power structure. But he had remarked to me once that on 11/22/63, on Kennedy's assassination day, he was giving a talk somewhere about assassinations. I have to find that talk, but no, he's a very interesting individual, Jordan Maxwell.
yeah. So the other thing was, I was thinking about water. There's something in the news about water, and the Templars, the whole baptism thing, the Templars, John the Baptist, when they were at the Temple Mount controlling it, they had a sacred cistern. And then like me personally, I appreciate a good rinse off when you're like doing stuff. I work, like blue collar stuff, or like you're on a trail. Like a good rinse off is one of the biggest things going. And I'm looking through my notes right now. I can't remember what made me think about that, but the whole like water thing with religion and how it cleanses you, and
Well, we're in the age of
the
Aquarius.
Templars.
Aquarius is the water bearer. And it was described to me by some occultist, thelemic type, that the water symbolizes wisdom. So the baptism of wisdom, the water being poured on the head, John the Baptist's head, and then you have interesting connections between Aquarius, the constellation, and John the Baptist worth looking at that describes in astrotheological terms the story of the severing of his head. And then there's the Baphomet, the word Baphomet, some have interpreted this to mean baptism into wisdom.
Yeah. Um, and then you know what I just found in my notes with the feudalism thing. I heard some data points about the Ukraine-Russia war. How they have like the drones are going heavy over there, and if you could see if you see a drone, you're done over there unless you have a drone contingency program. I'm kind of switching it up, but these other notes are in here somewhere.
Well, really quick,
But
let me read this part here. So for people who want to know what I was talking about,
yeah, yeah.
as Aquarius, John decreases from 24 June, getting lower in the sky until 29 August, when he quote gets his head cut off. So the head of Aquarius or John is seen above the horizon. So the myth of the severing of John the Baptist's head is actually a tie-in to the astrotheological storyline here of Aquarius.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. That's what I've heard too with them, with the Templars and John the Baptist and the whole head on the platter, and it ties into like the Holy Grail. So, anyways, I'll finish this thought and let you go because I'm rambling. But they were talking about Ukraine, Russia, and the drones. How all the military industrial complex companies are really getting like it's a beta test for them, and they love it. And there's these deep reconnaissance groups that are dealing with it consistently. And like, if you see them and you don't have a contingency plan, you're done basically. And then I guess on the Russian side, they're mostly like, they're having contingency plans for these operations. So they're kind of like, they're moving forward more obviously, like, but anyways, and it made me think of Elysium. I don't know if you see that movie.
What I think I may have seen Elysium. Okay, it's a 2013 science fiction with Jason Bourne. What's his name? Matt Damon.
Yeah, yeah, Matt Damon.
Okay, so 2154, a wealthy man lives on a man-made space station while the rest of the population lives on the ruined Earth. Interesting starting point because it's like Fallout, where some people are privileged and safe in their happy bunkers, and the rest are in the destroyed world on the surface. Such a reoccurring theme.
Yeah, Elysium's like a big ship up in space that Jodie Foster's on, and she's like one of the lieutenants for the elites.
Well, Tominoid says Jodie Foster has a 311 tied to her character. I'll have to look into that.
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more Easter eggs than I noticed, but it made me think of Elysium because in the movie, her operators are mercenaries, and most of it's from what I remember in South Africa, which is a contentious area, And I know a little bit about South African mercenaries from friends, and but that's like whatever. But these dudes, first of all, they had 3D. They had like biological 3D printers, where the guy got blown up and he got 3D printed back to life. But the drone thing was he had like a wristlet cuff, and he just hits a couple buttons and it sends off like, I don't know, like $50 sized drones that are suicide drones. And then when I was listening to the Russian Ukraine report, and they were talking about drones and deep reconnaissance groups and stuff, and like contingency plans and whatnot, and data points that the military industrial complex is gathering from it, and it just made me think of Elysium.
Well, there's
which was like a
uh,
while. Well, Elysium was a while ago. That movie.
it's 2013, so that's just predictive programming then. So it's probably worth a rewatch just to look at the predictive programming. And Tominoid says in the movie, Jodie Foster says, "Lock down grids 3 through 11," or something like that. So you have a 311 lockdown
There you
reference
go.
in it, and the whole movie is about a ruined Earth and the power elite in their space station, which is the arc concept, the saved, going into the space arc, which is another common theme I see in recent movies.
Yeah, I'll stay down here and take my chances.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. You know, they're gonna offer space travel to the millions. Musk wants to send 1,000 starships with 1,000 people, reach a million on Mars. But you know what I think they're gonna do with the first starship? They're gonna load it up with a lot of rich people. They're gonna head up to Mars and they're gonna get hit by a space iceberg, a comet. At which point people will say that they no longer have an appetite for interplanetary travel. Problem solved for NASA. They don't have to fake it. They can just kill the enthusiasm. Anyway, thanks for the call and thanks for
Yeah.
referencing. These are
Yo,
great
that was a
points.
good observation by Tom too.
Yes, I'm going to follow up and I'll find the clip where Jodie Foster references a 311 lockdown. That's another example again of predictive programming that just adds to the fact that, um, or substantiates what we've been saying here about how they prepare us for everything years in advance at a subconscious level. So we have these associations, lockdown 311, whether you know it or not. It's all there in your memory.
Respect, brother.
Have, yeah, thank you, and have a great weekend.
You too.
All right, everyone, that's G33. Phones are open. 349, oh, sorry, 505 349 0420. And ringer is, I have my ringer off, but I have it in a separate window, so you won't have to listen to it. It's one of the more annoying ringers in the world, Skype. I don't know why they do it. You used to be able to turn it off, but I think that's their branding, so they want you to have to deal with it. Tominoid 3 mentioned that J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye was in the movie with Mel Gibson, Conspiracy Theory. Yes, and it was mentioned in Six Degrees of Separation. This is all talked about in this Joseph Atwill podcast with Jay Widener, or Jay Weeder. Is it Wider? Let me bring it up again if you haven't seen this, what I'm referencing. I'm watching this podcast, well, listening to it, and it is between Jay Widener and Joseph Atwill, and they're talking about J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye. And what Joseph Atwill has done in his breakdown of this book is he's exposed a subtext, an entire subtext of Masonic initiation, followed by references, and then these suggestions that the Masons are killers, that there's some kind of sinister cult aspect behind it. A lot of it's kind of dark if you look at Joseph Atwill's interpretation, but that he went on to say that any of these high profile killings where the killer has that book, it's just a calling card for those who are in the club to know that this was a hit. And he specifically talks about Mark Chapman and how Mark Chapman killed John Lennon, and he had a copy of the book. So it's an interesting conversation that they're having, and I'm going to have to finish up my research on the matter. But basically, it's just another example of this all-encompassing immersive illusion. It exists not just in movies, but it's also in all the books, all the literature. It's all programmed. Tominoid says Marvel Falcon has a cute pet killer drone. Dwayne Garrett says same with the numbers. These are signatures. Yeah, exactly. I think that's how it seems to be the case. We're like, well, how old was the guy who just did this? How many rounds did Frank James fire into the subway? We're constantly pointing out the occult signatures behind all of the psyops, and the big ones in particular. You know, one of the big ones, George Floyd, Derek Chauvin, 846, asphyxiation, 9/11 kicks off 846, sun sets, Twin Cities, 846. So Twin Towers, 846, Twin Cities, 846, suffocation, 846, and you get into the meaning of it, and it has to do with, well, Mercury rising, things heating up, and the summer did heat up after that date, but it has connections between the Egyptian mystery schools, which is what J.D. Salinger refers to in his book when he refers to in an indirect way, the Masonic group, they refer to as Egyptians. It's one of the things that Atwell was talking about here. But in the Egyptian myth of Osiris and Set and the killing of the sun god, and it happens at sunset, that's when the sun god gets decapitated or chopped up. So it's notable that the sun set at 8:46 on the date of this death in 8 minutes and 46 seconds. But we've examined these things, and it's certainly the case. Signatures, signs, symbols. Mr. Trustworthy said Karl Rove played Mark David Chapman. I've seen the comparisons, and it's certainly close. Serial killer lookalikes. Mark Chapman and Karl Rove is a website about this. Okay, let's take a look here. Yeah, it's a match. In my opinion, it's a match. But you can't judge off of one photograph. You do have to go a little deeper, find video, do voice analysis. It's certainly on brand. It's probably some kind of inside joke as well. But whatever. Did Karl Rove kill John Lennon? Well, no, because John Lennon is Steve Jobs. And look, that one's conclusive. John Lennon is Steve Jobs. The Apples give it away. Apple Music, the whole, here we go, Apple computers. So I guess the real question is, did Karl Rove kill Steve Jobs? It's really perplexing. But look, John Lennon, Steve Jobs, there's a lot there. And this is just scratching the surface. All the world's a stage. I don't immerse myself in this because this entire area of research and discourse is rife with misinformation and trolls and low standards of evidence. The QAnon movement has totally destroyed any analysis of world stage fakery when it comes to actors portraying characters on the world stage. It's just been destroyed. It's incoherent. And everybody is everybody. Vivek Ramaswamy is JFK Jr. rapping Eminem. I mean, none of this stuff makes sense. There's just no logic anymore. They've thrown it out the window. Mango Penguin says, your work is never ending. You know, when I was a mortician, people used to joke and they would say, you know, you have job security, and which is true. Which I want to bring up. I didn't see any of the funeral homes getting rich in 2020. Just saying. But it's same thing with this, with auto hoaxing the fake news. The fake news is never going to stop. You know, this is a mine. This is a gold mine. We've struck gold here. This is never going to end. And we're not trying to end it, by the way. We are not trying to end this. This is parallel media. We're not anti-media. We're not alternative media. I saw a comment, I think it was Portal Complex. Yes, auto hoaxer cave climbers reach the surface to find it's not as bad as the shadows on the wall. The whole idea of shadows on the wall is that people are getting their interpretation of reality through a singular source. It can be a TV screen, a newspaper, an ideology, but the shadows on the wall is a really great way to describe our immersive illusion, the matrix that we're in. But what I want to point out, and this is where the matrix is all just deception, the whole movie concept of you can wake up. There really isn't any waking up if you're not fully apprised of how fake it is. And that's a very rare perspective to have. It's very counterculture, it's very hated on, it's very censored to truly appreciate how fake it all is. But you have mainstream shadows on the wall, and alternative media has always been alternative shadows on the wall. They never stepped out of the cave. You're not out of the cave if you don't include in your assessment both special effects and news bending. They use special effects because they're using movie magic, but news bending is real. If predictive programming is real, and it is, if concurrent programming is real, and it is, then news bending is real. They are writing our news, our history. They're preparing our news to match up with their predetermined histories. We're living through not just, the implementation of nonstop fake news and a false worldview. But what happens? Look behind you. All the fake news that we have studied closely since, let's just say 9/11 even. That's in the history books. It's no longer fake. It's carved in stone. And all of you who have noticed the truth and called it out accurately, that doesn't go into the historic record. It gets burned. So what we're doing with this parallel media construct is we are separating from the MSM worldview itself, which becomes the default history that the consensus agrees upon. We have to have a parallel road so we can observe, respond, and document. But the work is never ending, as Mango Penguins said. Okay, if you want to call right back, I just realized I'm going to turn the ringer on. Call back 505-349-0420. Let me scroll through my notes and see what else we have talked about. We talked about RFK has brain worms, likely from intestinal tapeworms. We don't want to know how he got those. And he's totally fine with infanticide, which is a huge foot bullet, infinite plane radio, because even the pro-abortion types aren't arguing for late-term infanticide. Hey, what's up, caller?
Hi, Tim. This is from Holland. Sebastian. Hey.
Oh, hey, thank you for calling,
Hey.
Sebastian. Thank you.
Yeah. Q&V is also a member of your Blue Ranch Lodge. But I just wondered if you try to look at his work from Q&V.
Oh, yes. In fact, I like Q&V. I was just chatting with him earlier today on Discord. I was trying to find this video where he was suggesting that the North Korean army is all CGI. And I looked at this old link I had, and it was terminated from YouTube. But anyway, yeah, I'm actually looking back into his work, and I want to hear what he has to say about a few things.
Yeah, because he really has some really good info. He's a modeler. He can use the grid system to model the sky, and then just have a look at certain things. You just have to look at his work. It's fabulous. But I've also been in the military, so I just know a few things about your history also. You also been in. Did you been in Iraq, for instance?
No, I have not been there, but I know a lot of people who deployed to Kuwait, and that's my unit was all air defense. So I have a few
Oh,
insights
okay.
about that aspect of it, because one thing I can say unequivocally is that it's highly compartmentalized. I'm not allowed to go out to
Yeah,
where they're
I
using
get
this
you.
technology because they have the missile interception technology, the air defense artillery. I can't get close enough to see it, and so like there's no way to know this. In other words, war is fakeable, and an
Yeah,
extraordinary statement for many, but no, war is fakeable.
yeah. It's all what you say, compartmentalized. Or yeah, yeah. And I just honest. I was really questioning about this. What do you think about the pyramids, how they were built and stuff like that?
As
What's
far
your opinion about that?
I think it's a fake mystery about the pyramids. About we don't know. I'm pretty sure that it's either the more recent constructs or they're somehow appropriated for some modern um, this modern paradigm. But I'm kind of thinking that the mystification is intentional. I don't think they're as ancient as they say. They give you these false leads like they used to be underwater or it used to be different, but I don't trust any of it. What's your take on the pyramids?
Well, I think it's like what you think also. Like they're just maybe a recent construct. Maybe just like the reset. Just been after the reset, some people just survived, managed to survive, knew some things, and just rebuild everything, escaped our future, our reality with ancient pyramids and ancient gods and things. I think it's yeah, maybe Freemasons. Is this yeah,
That could be their
Freemasons.
Yeah, Freemasons are Egyptian. I mean, yeah, they use a lot of Judeo-Christian stuff, Old Testament, but ultimately it's Egyptian. And you can see it in their symbolism, but I think the big secret might be that they are part of this operation of controlling minds through controlling history. And this would include creating
Yeah.
monuments and then backdating them with a fake backdate. What's the difference between creating a fake dinosaur and then saying it's 50 million years old, or building a piece of architecture and saying it's 10,000 years old? It gives you the ability to write a
Yeah.
backstory.
Yes. And there's a pretty good uh, reason that they just make cast these stones. Just with the limestone cycle. It's very easy to produce something like that in that kind of area.
Well,
Don't
that's
know if
another
you follow
important
me,
point.
but
Okay, Freemasons are basing their entire structure off of cathedral builders, and they had guilds. And in order to have security clearances, they had their secret handshakes. That's why they have the handshakes. It shows that, oh, you already know what third degree knows.
hmm
So this was a way of protecting the blueprints. The Masonic character who dies in the ritual dies protecting the blueprints for King Solomon's temple. But they're known for stonework, and it's all allegory for stonework. And so if you have this
yep,
mysterious edifice, nobody knows how it was made. Well, they know because it's all about the secrets, and they're not telling. And so they falsely present it as a mystery. And this is how I think they do all their mystery school things, where they
yeah.
convey something. This is a mystery. We don't know, but they know. And they hint that they know. But anyway, that's so it suggests that, yeah, maybe it's not even as old as the Masonic Lodge of England from 1717.
hmm maybe and that's the whole thing. What QNV also suggests that our time span, maybe you can, yeah, if you, maybe the world isn't even older than 500 years, and that maybe sounds really, really crazy, but if you look at the maps and all the things, yeah, it could be just magical, more magical than we think we know, that we have been taught by school. And
Well, you know what lends credence to
yeah,
that hypothesis would be John Dee. John Dee was a magician who believed we lived in a flat realm, and it had these layers to it, but it was basically a flat plane. And he believed that this is a magical universe. He's like this, he's a magician. And John Dee was a confidant, friend, and advisor to Gerardus Mercator. And we have our globe projection, the Mercator projection. So why is this
1500s.
guy? Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a direct connection here. So I'm thinking, wait, you can't separate the globe from John Dee, a magician who didn't believe in it. So I think that maybe there's something else going on here, and it involves whatever this thing is that we call magic. But yeah, I'm open to the idea. I'm certainly open to that far more than I'm open to the idea of establishment science that tells us that we're just apes with big egos.
yeah, no, but just for instance, Mercator, 1500s. How did they measure the seas and how did they measure the lands? Like a good point from QNV in the Amazon, you have to go to a straight angle, like on the latitude, you have to go take straight lines from continent to one point of the continent to the other, measure everything, and everything was so correctly in the 1500 by Mercator. But how did they? What kind of tools did they use? Those surveyors. It just raises all kind of questions.
Yes.
How did Mercator put this in the 1500s so yeah, precisely?
And what
Yeah.
about Mercator's
How did?
letter to John Dee about this 33-mile circumference magnetic rock at the North Pole? Like
Yeah.
that's a bizarre thing to try to explain away, and you can't just ignore him because John Dee coined the phrase British Empire. So he's not a historical personage you can just ignore. So there's a lot of questions to be raised there. I'll make sure to reach out to Kunifi. I want to get to his channel and catch up, and maybe I'll have him on because he does cover
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff that we talk about.
Yeah. That would be really nice. If I think he can tell you this better than I can. But yeah, you should. He has some fun work, but especially about the modeling and using the local data from like all the websites you can use, or moon.net, SunCalc. You can use the grid system, the 33 grid system, and yeah, like a coordinate system. Use the angles to a celestial body and then just fit it all together. The thing is, if you do all this, you will come to the conclusion we all have our own side, and then just it's magical merge together when we are together. It's crazy, but
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
it's really yeah, very interesting, very interesting.
Because lately I've been pretty open about my opinion here that the universe may not even exist as a static place, like balls in space or whatever, but it may not even exist until it's experienced. Like it's not like sort of like a video game where yeah, the video game
Yeah,
exists in potential and it's on this disc or it's in this program, but it doesn't really exist until you play it and your avatar is in it and you're moving through it. And similarly, I tend to think that the realm of incarnation that we're in is something that is created as it's perceived and experienced because it's all constructed of information and meaning and the connection between the information as interpreted by its sentient perceivers. So I don't think the world of the universe exists until we experience it. And if that's the case, then their model is designed to take a living, intelligent universe and make it into a corpse, a rotting corpse. So I totally disagree with the modern paradigm. I think everything is more alive. So when you suggest that maybe the world's only 500 years old, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense to me.
yeah, and it's crazy when you think about sediments. I've been in some kind of education about the ground layers and learning about them, and seashells very deep. But the thing is, if creation can make all of this, there has to be some reason that they made this. But the creation that made this, he can make it as like he want. Maybe he just uh, made this world yesterday and gave you the right memories. I don't know if it makes sense, but it's you
Backdated.
can go all
Y-
kind of
Yeah,
ways.
I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Very interesting take there. And I mean, they unquestionably they mess with our history. If you think about every crisis actor on the world stage, that person has a fake backstory. So their past doesn't even exist, and they enter the world stage as real with this fake backstory that we all believe to be real. So there's a couple of different levels to this. Our mental construct is obviously fake, and our backstories, our histories can easily be faked. So then my question is, where does the fakery extend to the physical world? We have our mental and our physical, and how much of the
Mhm.
physical is a substrate of the mental? Because if it is, then yeah, the question of the shape doesn't matter. It's all about worldview.
No, no, maybe not. But the thing is, yeah, you just, yeah, and I know we know their lies about the moon landing and all the things. But the thing is, yeah, can you just have to know, 1,000% uh, secure to yeah I don't know. It's just you can just know that it does not only a globe is correct, but also not the flat Earth is correct. If you make these measurements like QNV uses, like he does it. But
Yeah, this is
yeah,
interesting because I
well,
one other point here I bring up how if anything, the mass media synchronizes all of our minds. So if we all do have our own, if we're all the center of our own universe in some way, there's no way we would know because we're
like
too,
biocentrica. Yeah.
yeah, biocentric. If that's the case, then that would explain why they herd us together with mind control so that we don't notice. And this is the idea of, I think, of the Tower of Babel and the unification. It's to put a yoke around all of these free spirits, more or less, and have them all
Yes,
manifesting
yes.
one design.
Yeah, like universe, it's a one thing, but we experience it together. But yeah, just in our own vision, our own thing. And if we look at the suns, if we go back to back and see the sun, we just walk away from it. We see the sun in the same direction. But if we do this on three different locations, on three different continents, for example, you will see that it doesn't, if you model this, it doesn't triangulate. It doesn't go to the same celestial body. And this is really crazy. But again, you just have to check QNVD's work. It's not only, yeah, it's just it's very interesting stuff. Yeah,
Okay, I will take a look. I will definitely look at this because I've been veering this way anyway, my thinking, and I'm trying to find a model. Like way before I even questioned NASA, I was already kind of changing my model of the universe as something that is outside of the explanation of modern physics, which may, at the time, I thought maybe they were just blinkered or limited, but now I think they're concealing. I think they might be concealing a more dynamic living universe and presenting us
yes,
instead with this
yes,
dying corpse of a thing. Anyway, I appreciate the call very much and call back anytime, and I'll take your recommendation and follow up with Cunify. And I'm interested.
yeah, man. And yeah, thank you. Yeah, and again, I'm just as optimistic as you are, and QMV he doesn't also believe in nuclear bombs and then viruses and all. Nah, you just have to check his work. Again, thank you for having me, and Tim.
Yeah, thank you for the call, Sebastian. Have a great Saturn day, and call back anytime.
It's good.
Awesome. Okay, well, I will be looking into this, and this is a fascinating concept because flat or round, obvious false dichotomy, and I've been moving away. I moved away from that a while ago, and I'm focused more on worldview. And now I'm getting to this point where if the material world is a substrate of the mental, if it proceeds from the mind, if all is mind, if there's some other explanation, and look, this is like panpsychism possibly, however you want to describe it, simulation theory. If this is the case, then the question of shape is meaningless. The question should be worldview. If you're a co-creator and you've been given a filter to cause you to create something of someone else's design, wouldn't you want to know? Dewis in Paris says, good call, respect to the Dutch for how quickly, efficiently they're able to learn foreign languages. Very impressive. Nicotramus says, Jake Gibson is a huge Cunify fan. Yes. Well, Cunify has been at this for a long time. In fact, back in when I started this channel, he did a video on one of my videos, which was funny, because I was drinking a blood orange smoothie. And he did a video suggesting that orange is 33 and blood is blood. And I was telegraphing that I'm a 33rd degree Masonic vampire. And I think he called me a POS in his way, but it was funny. I wish I had the video because I'm literally just drinking blood orange. And he's like, yep, you're a blood drinking Mason, which does make sense if you analyze the symbolism, sure. Dwayne Garrett, you remember that? Yeah, classic. Elephant Tusk says you can actually recreate your avatar from your mind. Most people cannot process that. Now, another thing about it, if this is true, then we're all whatever you want to call it, reality processors. Like reality is a thing. It's not a place, but it's like a substance. It's like dark matter. It's the yet to be manifest. It's that what we don't perceive, but it becomes real as we perceive it. And if we look at it from that perspective, then it would make sense they would want to have us all synchronized to create one specific design. And I think that may correlate to King Solomon's Temple. I think that may correlate to the whole Masonic and all these mystery schools, but the Masonic in general, its lore is all about this construction of a universal brotherhood, universal, and it's King Solomon's Temple, and the architect is Hiram, the one who dies protecting the secret, and then he's resurrected. But I remember some part of the litany where they're describing how if you're initiated, you're going from being a rough stone to a polished brick, worthy of being placed into the edifice of King Solomon's Temple. So then I'm thinking, okay, you shape your worldview, you're now a brick in the wall, and they build this big edifice where everybody is now part of this one world view. And so the one world isn't about architecture, it's not about a physical thing, it's about the mental construct. And that's why I say worldview is key here. Because the worldview is your internal model. And your internal model is how you augment what you perceive with your experience and your knowledge and your training and your skills. And so you're basically having this enhanced version superimposed over the real thing. But the problem is, you're not only building your model from your own experiences, you're augmenting it with lies. And those lies are collectively agreed upon. And these lies are the bricks in this edifice, this temple, this Tower of Babel construct. Duas Impera says, shape is meaningless for those who question the shape ironically, but meaningful in the sense it would have if more people arrived at the point of questioning shape. Yeah, I'll say this. The flat earth question is very relevant and useful and worth exploring. Flat earth models are premature, but the question is certainly reasonable. It's really a question about worldview, like I said, about authority, about questioning the argument from authority implicit in the screen. But what Cunify is doing, and this is why I want to follow up on this, is doing real measurements, doing real observations, because, and I said this before, it should never be religion versus science. Flat Earth became a religion, and it became opposed to the scientists. And it's like you shouldn't be opposed to science. Science is a methodology. It's not a belief system, although it happens to have become one. It as capital S, scientism. But scientism is what allows people to just accept on the authority of science, which makes them susceptible to all kinds of hyperstitions, myths, fake moon landings. Elephant Tusk says the internal model is based on subconscious beliefs. Well, the model is certainly programmed largely by our environments and by things that we haven't consciously processed. And that's why it's worthwhile to ask if you really know the earth is a ball. Because when you ask yourself how you know, then you do an internal auditing of how you've arrived at your various conclusions. And if you follow this thread, you'll be forced to recognize that you only believe certain things because you took a leap of faith, because you put your head through the screen. And I suggest socially distancing yourself from the screen. We have the screened worldview, the filter, that is meant to enhance your reality, augment it, inform you, but all it does is it conforms you to their big lie. So I suggest you suspend judgment when it comes to belief. Giving something belief is giving it your power. And this is part of the various magical philosophies. It's also part of neurolinguistic programming. It's the concept that belief itself is a tool, and where attention goes, energy flows. It's kind of a cliche, but within the concept of magic, where your focused concentration goes, where your intention goes, that's where your soul goes. That's where your ability to have a feedback loop with the universe, that's where synchronicity comes from. But in the context of these various magical paradigms, the ability to believe something temporarily can make it true. So that's the theory behind it. So you have a goal, or like prayer. We call it faith, I guess you could say. So what's happening here is your ability to have faith in something is being appropriated. So now instead of having faith in yourself or faith in some higher power or a higher source of all things, now your faith is being placed in what they're telling you. Faith in media. Let's see, someone said, oh yes, Elephant Tusk says the Floyd psyop was a Hiram Abiff ritual. Well, Hiram Abiff is a stand-in for the sun god, so it is. And this is one of the things that we also see in the Kennedy assassination, and it's coming up with, I believe it's going to be the case with Trump. The whole Biff Tannen may be a tie-in to Hiram Abiff, but there's certainly the case. And last night we talked about this, the Donald Trump 9/11 on the head thing, where his avatar has a 9/11, his hats have a 4547, which is 9/11. And someone pointed out something else too. The 616th prime, the 616th prime number is 4547. Now, why is that significant? Well, if Donald Trump is the beast and he's going to get the head wound, this is the subtext. He has 4547 because he's president 45 and he aspires to be 47. You add those, 45 is 9, 47 is 11. So he's got a 9/11 on the side of his head. His avatar on Truth Social has a 9/11 over his face in the form of two red stripes from the flag and the blue section with part of a red stripe, which makes the 9, and it has 9 stars. And it's covering one eye. So you have the one eye symbolism, 9/11, 4547, which is a 9/11, and 4547 happens to be the 616th prime number. Now, why is that significant? Well, 666 is the number of the beast, but there's another interpretation that the number of the beast is 616. So he's got them both. This is definitely just reiterating here. This is some deep symbolism. Catching up on comments. Oh, really? You don't say, asks, is embalming an Egyptian ritual? Interesting question. And, when I was an embalmer, I was very much interested in the dog-headed god Anubis, the psychopomp, the guide into the underworld. And I remember looking into this ancient art of embalming, and could it be ritualistic? It could very well be. Is it necessary? No. It's only necessary because of public health reasons, actually. It's a sanitation thing. But as far as ritualistic implications, James Shelby Downard, who wrote King Killed 33, he claimed that the autopsy has some significance, and he was specifically talking about the JFK autopsy. But he said that the letter Y that they carve across the chest is a reference to Pythagoras. And he talked about the significance of the Y being a split or a crossroads representing the path of virtue and the path of vice. Anyway, he goes deep into it. I'll look into it some more about the possible occult connotations of the autopsy, where he even specifically mentioned the removal of the brain, which is a thing. And speaking of autopsies, this is something that kind of debunks the whole clot shot thing. If you think that causes clots and that it's abnormal that there are clots in bodies, here's something you should know. If somebody dies unexpectedly, they get autopsied. And if they're autopsied, there are cuts, there are incisions that cut every major artery, meaning that when they're taken to the funeral home, they have to do a 6-point injection where you're injecting the legs separately, the arms separately, and then the head through both sides of the neck. Now, I bring this up because clots are not an issue with autopsied bodies. They would never be. Because, again, you're dealing with a circulatory system that has been decimated. So what I did was restorative arts, putting them back together. So that was never an issue. My point being, if somebody dies suddenly, you're not going to see clots. So if they're saying, oh, these people died suddenly because of the clots, it's like, no, that's not the case. The reason why you have big clots in embalmed bodies is they're sitting around in the refrigerator for a few days congealing. And it's normal. In fact, the embalmer's job is really embalmer/clot puller, because you have a long forceps inserted into the jugular that practically reaches into the heart. And what you're doing is, as you're pumping fluid into the carotid artery, you're withdrawing clots to make sure that the blood flow out is consistent. Because if it stops because of a clot, you could end up with bloating. You could end up with problems. So I was very watchful, and I was constantly pulling out large clots. And sometimes I was amazed. It's like, oh, this person's 90 and they got these huge clots. Well, no, these clots weren't there when they were alive. They're more or less, a lot of these things are just, again, natural consequence of being in a refrigerator post-mortem. But my point being, the ones that you're embalming with a single point injection, where you have to pull the clots out, those are natural causes. They don't need an autopsy because it's natural. So the whole premise behind the clot shot thing, the clot shot phobia, is that these things will give you clots, is fallacious. And there's no evidence to support it. And any embalmer that made this correlation is being intrinsically dishonest, because you're not going to encounter unexpected deaths where you're only going to do a single point injection. Little tangent there. Let's see if we can get back on track. We talked about the severed head of John the Baptist, who interestingly can be represented as Aquarius, and the beheading of John the Baptist is represented as Aquarius in August, getting lower in the sky until just the head is visible, so it's cut off by the horizon. And it also makes another connection. I have to click this link here. It looks like they're also equating John the Baptist with the Egyptian god Anubis. On the midnight of August 28th or 29th, as seen from Alexandria, the head of Anubis, or Aquarius, appears to be cut off. And this is from Matthew 14:10. Very interesting. Aquarius was seen at Alexandria above the southern horizon, traveling along the ecliptic. So they make references to it in this book here, in the book of Matthew, a few others, but anyway. Islamic myth, Muslims believe the head of John the Baptist, aka the head of Yah, existed, and various caliphs were purported to have possession of it. I've heard this too, about the possession of John the head, or the head of John the Baptist. Apparently the Templars were able to communicate through it. And I think there might be something to that myth, and it may have to do with some Templar rite, but I don't think they literally have John the Baptist's head. They may have some kind of contrivance where, as part of the ritual, somebody is playing the role of John the Baptist and has his head inserted through a hole in a table. I've come across this idea before. And that John the Baptist could be a reference to the Baphomet. The whole idea that they were accused of worshiping Baphomet. Well, one of the accounts I came across was that the Baphomet is actually a reference to John the Baptist. And the Masons swear their oaths to the holy saints John. Two saints. They have two fingers up. And they're swearing to the holy saints John. John the Baptist and John the Revelator. And this may even tie into the Templar symbol of two men to a horse, because these are the poor knights of the temple, and is a knights that who took the vows of poverty, and so to symbolize their poverty, it would be two to a horse. Diana South said, a shrunken head by now. Well, I know that even today the Templars drink blood, or wine rather, out of the top of a skull. All right, let's move on. I'm just going to catch up on the notes here. Yesterday I discussed The Politics of Fear, a podcast with Arthur Goldwag. It's his book. And they make some very good, these are two recovering Scientologists. These two individuals leave the cult of Scientology and become experts on cults and the politics of fear and propaganda, mass manipulation and mind control. It's Chris Shelton. It's his podcast called Speaking of Cults, and he's interviewing Arthur Goldwag. Anyway, I recommended this one. I played some clips yesterday because what they're comparing is the cult mind control tactics and cultic belief systems to conspiracy theories. And I think there might be something to it. It could be the case that alt media is ultimately built around a large cult, an end of the world doomsday cult at its core. And that is likely the case. I mean, what religion isn't essentially a doomsday cult? Dewis in Paris says, I met Scientologists in a dream last night. Probably wasn't a dream. No, I don't know. But I do know that beneath the sci-fi veneer, Scientology is, in my opinion, and this is why I was looking so closely into it, like his connection with Jack Parsons is highly significant. Jack Parsons, the American counterpart to Aleister Crowley, meets up with a sci-fi guy, and then they create this space religion. So I'm like, Scientology, NASAtology. That's how they constructed this new paradigm. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, maybe Scientology is just a science fictionized version of the OTO. And the OTO organization is it's the Ordo Templi Orientis. But this is a magical organization, but it's referencing the Templars. It's a Templar thing. At least that's what it's the Order of the Oriental Templars. Just to put things into context, the whole idea of Templars and magic and Baphomet worship in the occult. You can say it was a historical hoax, that they didn't worship Baphomet, that it wasn't involved in any of this stuff, but then explain the OTO. And what we're looking at with the OTO and these other groups is simply the esoteric version of the exoteric, of the version of the public sees. Very interesting side note, this topic. Even the Church of Satan claims that their use of the Baphomet symbol is ultimately from the Knights Templar. And then I also saw something else about the Skull and Bone Society claiming to be, or tracing their roots to the Templars. And the story is the Templars went underground, they're purged, they're disbanded, but they remained as a living organization, but they were hidden. And they reemerged in 1717 as the Grand Lodge of Freemasonry. And interestingly, they were disbanded in 1312. And 1312 is one of these slogans that BLM was constantly spray painting everywhere, or chanting. It actually refers to ACAB, all cops are bastards. So the news media is constantly doing these reports, and during 2020's riots, and I'm looking behind their heads and I'm seeing 1312, 1312. I'm seeing people kneeling. And so I'm looking at the kneeling. Hands up, don't shoot, kneeling. All these things that you associate with BLM and this martyr cult are all Masonic. Hands up is the third degree hailing sign of distress. The kneeling has some Templar connotations. And then they're all out there spray painting the 1312. And I'm wondering, could 1312 be a reference to the Templars? And could be a reference to who's really behind all of these revolutions, all of these movements. Could this be a signal, the calling card of the hidden hand, puppeteering all these people marching around? So Knights Templar, poor fellow soldiers of Christ, Temple of Solomon. There's that Temple of Solomon reference again. Ceased operations 1312. Look at this date, 322. Okay, Skull and Bone Society, chapter 322. The Georgia Guidestones appear on 322, 1980. 42 years later, it's destroyed, but 322 has been consistently associated with the Skull and Bones. So the Templars were disbanded 322, 1312. I didn't know that was the date. I knew it was the year. G33 says, I have a Holy Grail book about the head on a table and the head on a platter. Haven't figured out the symbolism yet. Now, the Holy Grail, I've seen it as a symbol of the goddess, the Magdalene, the chalice, which in the playing cards, it's the hearts. And it's interesting to get into the symbols, too. I was looking at the symbol of the Order of the Eastern Star. Let me see if I can bring this up. Yes, Order of the Eastern Star. I'm going through some trails here, but Order of the Eastern Star has this 5-pointed star with these colors representing the 4 elements plus spirit. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hi.
Hey, what's up? Is this G33 again?
Yeah. So, bro, that from what I understand, the Templars, the genesis of their persecution was Friday the 13th, October 1307.
Oh, that's correct. According to the Masonic lore, Jacques du Molay was burned at the stake on Friday the 13th.
He got thrown under a bus. He laid down in front of the bus.
Jacques du Molay and the Curse of Friday the 13th burned on a stake. Now, I think this was referenced when the Notre Dame fires happened, and they said they saw a Knight Templar inside of the burning building.
Yeah, I seen that. I mean, I don't know. It was on the news, right? But dude, the dude looks just like a Templar. He's walking around up there, and then they had a beehive up there, right?
They had 3 beehives, each one containing 60 1,000 bees, 60, 60, 60. And this all ties into the symbol of the Templars originally was a beehive. So you got the hexagram in the beehive, 60-degree angles, 60-degree angles, 60-degree angles. Yeah, very much the whole thing. The burning of Notre Dame was a Masonic ritual in that sense. It was all over it. But do you know what they call the youth group? The Masonic youth group?
Yeah, the Bill Cooper was in it.
Oh, he was? Okay, yeah, the Masonic Youth Fraternity. Yeah, he did. He believes that he got his security clearance because he was in the Masonic Youth Fraternity.
He was pretty good, dude.
Well, look, the group's called DeMolay. Imagine signing your
Yeah.
children up for an organization named after a guy who was burned at the stake. I always thought that was kind of interesting. Like, interesting choice as a parent. Not that he's a
Well,
bad guy,
those
but
people think if you really live in that kind of existence, as far as like your dad's like, imagine if your dad was 33rd,
sure, sure. That's kind of what I'm thinking here.
right? Just put it in perspective, right?
Earlier tonight, I referenced Catcher in the Rye, and Joseph Atwell was
Imagine
suggest.
if you were, because I can appreciate you putting up the other stuff. What you're actually on camera now,
Well,
and it's funny because you listen to people on the radio and stuff, and then you never think like, oh, that's what they look like, right? But it wasn't. You do kind of look like what I thought you looked like, right? So imagine if like you're like a not us, a white dude, and you're living in a family that was in Prince Hall or Boulay, 33rd degree.
well, sure. Look, most of the people that I knew who were in the Masonic
You
Lodge
understand? You
had
understand what I'm
had
saying?
most of the people that I met were second or third generation. Like it's like Boy Scouts. It's like anything. A lot of these things, yeah, tend to run in because to get into it, you have to know two people who will vouch for you. So you're kind of already in the circle if you're getting in. The only reason I gained access is I was in the military and I was surrounded by them,
I'm
and the
not. I'm not saying you. I'm not saying you. I'm just saying the
No, I'm saying
perspective of
no, I'm saying
any
I joined.
person.
I'm saying is I joined. I was only able to join because I had to make my own contacts. I didn't have anybody in my family who was in.
Yeah, I do it. If I was, my father-in-law's in it, right? But he's lower level because he's in a lot of ethnic clubs, so they like recruited him. Bro, I would do it just to be a mole,
Well,
just to see what the fuck they're doing.
they would say that there is no lower level. That there's only the level, and that once you're raised at third degree, you're all on the same level. Like 4, 5, 6, up to 32.
That's not true though.
They say it's not higher, but it's just expanding your knowledge
A
on.
33rd and a third and a 33rd are on different levels. They may say that, right? And I can appreciate their protocol, but that's not what they mean.
Well, I don't.
And that's what they're all about,
Sure,
is a
sure.
vetting system. The pyramid on the back of the dollar bill. It's compartmentalization. That's their protocol,
And
in
you're
my
right about
opinion.
vetting. It's specifically vetting because the trade guilds, the stoneworker guilds, had to preserve or protect their trade secrets, and so the system of security clearances has existed, as long as these fraternities. And it's just that they use the stoneworking stuff to describe their vetting, but they're not really stoneworkers. They could use any. You could use almost any system, and I would even say that it's archaic. Like, why look at the Masonic lodges as anything? You could be a mole there if you wanted to, but that's not where the power is today. The power is in security clearances. It's in intel. So it may be a lead in, it may get you in the club, but I don't think that's like you couldn't say, oh, the Masons control the world. No, it's like no, the Masonic structure
No, they
itself is a
don't control
template.
the rope. They know they're just an asset, in my opinion. I would just do it for fun, dude. I'm not looking for clearances or nothing. I just, because I mean, at a certain point, a lot of us here probably know damn near as much as a third degree knows, right? I mean,
Well, I was involved in it, but I was also involved in the Thelemic group at the same time, and I can recognize the similar templates. So I go from Abbey of Thelema to the Blue Lodge, and I'm like, okay, this is the same thing. but this one is more overtly Egyptian, and this one dresses it up with Judeo-Christianity. But it's the same stuff if you can look behind it. And in my opinion, most of the people around me were not apprised of the deeper level of meaning. In fact, I thought a lot of them had a pretty shallow appreciation for it. And because of that, I think I kind of stood out because I was always frequenting the library. And I met an older member who showed me how, he was part of this other group called Rosicrucians, and they would meet twice a year. And he was like, yeah, if you just hang around long enough, you'll eventually get tapped on the shoulder by somebody who might show you what you want to know. And through this individual, I was given a stack of books that really blew my mind because it was all this Rosicrucian like meeting books, but it was basically everything that I saw in Thelema. In other words, I think Aleister Crowley and his cult were basically appropriating Masonic stuff that isn't for the Blue Lodge and then mainstreaming it or putting it into their own catalog. And like 777, Crowley's book on Kabbalistic numerology, I think he plagiarized it from the Masonic clubs. But anyway, I came across one particular book or article that was describing the quote hermetic magical principles within Blue Lodge ritual. So people say it's not a religion, it's just a club. Yeah, believe that if you want. You can have your blinders on if you want, but I have it, firsthand. I have some pretty good evidence just doing my own comparative analysis and my
Some
own
some people, it's too scary that that's how things go.
and something very few talk about is the fact that it's gender and racially segregated. Like, isn't that kind of non-PC? But no one questions it. Why is that? Why is this one
No, but what I
institution?
just said, what about Prince Hall and Boulay and then Eastern Star? So it's not.
Yes, it is. It
When I,
is.
when I brought that up, I wasn't trying to bring race in it. I was trying to bring, and I know that's not what you're referencing, but I'm just going off of your
No, no.
reference,
What I'm
right?
saying is that
I was just bringing in the perspective
Prince
of
Hall.
any one person that subscribes to esoteric occultism within the fraternal group orders, the pyramid compartmentalization
No,
structures.
I'm just
It could be
saying,
it could be
in this
anyone.
age, 2024, it's a little strange to me that out of out of everything, it just seems strange that hey, this particular group isn't being looked at as something that needs to be wokeified. Nobody's saying, hey, let's integrate the black and white lodges. Let's de-gender
Oh,
segregate. No, they're separated.
y- yeah, dude. I mean that's a good observation because I haven't even thought of that. But of course that won't happen.
Well, it's by design, and it has nothing to do with racism. It has to do with the duality.
The
And
woke thing is like
no, but look,
the woke thing is just like
the reason why they divide these
an
things,
ultimate red herring too, just spinning wheels.
but the reason why they have them
You're,
divided.
the woke thing is taking your pistol out and shooting yourself in the foot.
But look, the reason why they have them divided, in my opinion, is that if you look back at all the psyops in America, our psyops, specifically race psyops, things like Jackie Robinson, Mr. 42, Rosa Parks, civil rights, and all these fake shootings going from, or the death of Emmett Till to Trayvon Martin, they all have Masonic symbolism, and it's all based on black and white. So what they have done is they have appropriated the racial um, connotations of black and white and put it into their psyop symbolism of duality and poles, left and right, male, female, active, passive. So it's not really about race, but the whole thing with like George Floyd, for example, and Derek Chauvin, it's about this dialectic they've created. And that's why, again, I think that they are separated. I think they're separated because they are doing this alchemical work, but I don't think it's about anything beyond that. And that's why you would separate male and female. It has more to do, I think, with the underlying magical occult principles.
Of course, I agree with you. So, yeah, duality. Like, but that's the thing is when I don't know, man. I'm just your average person, but I have an interest in certain things, and I feel like I kind of figured out a little bit about it. The fundamentals are the duality. Then you got the Trinity. So they love to operate fundamentally off the duality, light and dark.
Well, I describe this as a bifurcated Psywar. They split it down the middle, and I think it's designed to mirror our own minds, our conscious and our subconscious. So I think that the political aspect,
The mirror, bro, duality.
it's a
Mirror is
template.
33, and I forget if it's Pythagorean or ordinal. Mirror is 33.
Well, we're definitely, I think, getting into the territory there here, though. I think of, what we're looking at is describing how the mind war itself is a reflection of our internal cognitive processes and our internal needs and drives and the division between our waking and our dreaming mind. And I think the psyops are used to target our dreaming mind. All the entertainment, it's like dreaming. You're just plugging all this content into your subconscious and you're not filtering it. Like when you're in a dream, it's like a movie. But when you're awake, it's all filtered through your eye, through your ego. And I think they're targeting our egoless its, our subconscious, just data dumping all kinds of content in there.
I agree, right? um, so the people like say, "Oh, I'm living the dream, the American dream." You got to be asleep to believe it. George Carlin said that.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Okay.
you know what? He's 100% right, although he means it in a pessimistic sense, but he's 100% right in a literal sense.
Sometimes you got to be pessimistic, man.
Maybe,
Like
maybe. I
sometimes,
actually think pessimism's a weapon, and it's a depowering perspective.
yeah,
But
but you get upset, don't you? You seem like you're a pretty even guy. It doesn't seem like you get upset, but I'm sure you get upset.
I'm sure I do. I'm not outraged by any of the manufactured outrages or any of the current things. I'm not worried about any of those things, that's for sure. Things that upset me are probably minor things, and I have a hard time sustaining any kind of anger about things that are not consequential. Like some guy stole my catalytic converter or my muffler, and I wasn't really mad about
I
it.
remember.
I was just perplexed.
You didn't sound mad about it,
I
but
I was amazed. I was amazed at somebody with the skill set to sneak into a parking lot, crawl under a car, saw off some component, and then get away in the middle of the night and turn a profit. Like, yeah, there's something to it, but it's misdirected. I never understand the talented, intelligent, skilled criminals who haven't found a better way to employ themselves because I do believe in the American dream in the sense that if you have a skill set and the right attitude, you can do something with it. You don't have to resort to
all
stealing.
right. I I see what you're saying now, and I do too, man. I'm just saying you're talking about dreams and
But no, you're right though. You're right though. In the
um.
other sense, George Carlin is 100% right to buy into the big vision, and America is leading us to the space and to the moon, and we're a world power. We got the biggest missiles. Like, no, that's all a dream, and it's all ignoring America's past, its present. Yeah, no, George Carlin's pessimism is very well pointed and warranted, I'm sure. But the way that he means you have to be asleep, it has multiple layers. I think it definitely has a deeper significance than just the pessimistic layer because yeah, we're a world of dreamers. It's everywhere. It's not just America.
It's easy to be angry, but I always look at the cup half full.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's a point here where attitude really does influence outcomes to a huge degree, more than people would expect, especially if you're convinced that we're in a dead universe and we're just a bunch of apes. Because if that's the case and we're just a bunch of apes competing over scarce resources, why would you have a good attitude? Everything about this dominant paradigm is, well, we'll try our best to stop man from destroying the world before the planet killing asteroid takes us out in 2029.
Yeah, that's why I kind of like get lost with the whole simulation thing. I'm like, if it's a simulation, I don't know what to do with myself. I guess I'm just screwed, right? Like, otherwise, I can't really prove it, so I'm just gonna keep doing recon.
Yeah, I see that. And when I say simulation, I think of simulation as
No,
mo-
you didn't say it.
no,
Other
but
we've been here before, and people that really subscribe to that.
yeah, I found it perplexing too because it's like we're reducing it to just a
And I'm
sim.
not throwing them under the bus.
But
I respect everybody's perspective, but I'm just saying, like, I don't know what to do with that. Like I gotta.
but
If it is, I don't know.
but perhaps
And then if it ain't, I gotta stay frosty.
perhaps simulation is just using modern computer terminology to describe something spiritual or more profound or something. But yeah, I think on some level you could describe what we live in as a simulation enhanced objective reality because our worldview is separate from the real thing, and it's the worldview that they toy with. But yeah, I'm interested in determining what the edges are of the universe, of our personal universes. But we have to seek. I don't think being a believer will get you the answers. You have to be a seeker or a researcher, as the media would call us. They hate the
Br-
term independent researchers. It's like the new terrorist.
Yeah, I like what you just said, dude. You got to seek,
Yep,
because
exactly.
that's why we've all like you've talked about prepping, right?
Yep.
And I shoot back like prepping ain't about buying food from Richie. It's about just being ready. And you were in the military, so you know what I'm saying. It's just like you got your kit. So yeah, that's why I love hitting the trail, because you're seeking. It's muscle memory, and then we do this with our brains.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Reconnaissance, intel gathering, what we're doing here is like solving a massive puzzle. It's an investigation. It's a lot of research, but it's very active. It requires seeking, not merely believing. And I think we've been trained collectively. Humanity has been trained to be a bunch of believers, and seekers are exiled. They're apostates. Seekers are infidels or they're heretics. Those who seek their own answers outside the priesthood have always been marginalized. And now the modern day seeker is a conspiracy theorist. It means that you're not satisfied with establishment answers, so there's something wrong with you. So, no, I'm looking here to grow a large network of seekers and create this parallel media based on that premise.
Yeah, dude, that's like the greatest observation. You're totally right. Like, yeah, people back in the day that looked outside the thought stream were heretics.
Yep.
And that's not us.
Mind control is
Or
an
that's
ancient art, and they have
that's
fine
not us
tuned it.
looking. We have the broad spectrum.
Yeah, exactly. We stepped out of the box, and we're in a very unique place because the majority are in the box or a box within the box. The programmers are outside of the box, and there's very few of them. And now here we are breaking out of it. And very soon, we're going to outnumber the programmers because they have to limit the number of people in the know at the top of the pyramid in order to maintain this thing. And I want to outnumber the capstone. And that can happen. It's just a matter of amassing a large group of media skeptics who've broken free of the alt media trap.
Yeah. So I just called back about the whole Templar thing because I love the Templars.
I'm glad you did. I didn't know that they ended on
We
3
talked
2,
we talked about it before.
but I didn't know the March 22nd thing. 322 being the date that they were officially ended. That's new to me. Another puzzle
Yeah,
piece.
I didn't know that either. To be totally honest with you, yeah, I didn't know that either. I just know Friday 13th, October 1307, which maybe I'm mistaken, but I've read multiple Templar books, and that's the date.
Well, that date, so
You know, there may be a little variation.
there may be, I think that's the consistent date, and I've looked at this a few times. It may be one of the origins because it is said that as de Molay was burning, he cursed the Inquisitor General, who was then supposedly killed in a hunting accident thereafter, having his throat slashed by a wild boar. So yeah, there is a curse of de Molay.
Bro, you know, you just said that to me, and it made me think about Dick Cheney.
Oh yeah, yeah, the shooting. Who did he shoot in the head?
He shot his buddy in the shoulder with the bird shot.
Yeah,
But yeah, so
yeah. There's this thing. Look it
I
up.
just
It's called
remember
the.
I remember you always used to kind of like reference 1312 with all cops are bastards and the Templars, and that's their day. But from what I remember, and like I said, I kind of like
Yeah, what
I
happened
like
is,
these guys like
yeah,
I like these guys like I like the Florida Panthers. I'm pretty sure it was 1307
yeah. That's when it. That's
that they
when
originally got like their headquarters raided.
exactly an
You
order
know,
goes out.
ATF hit their door on 1307.
So here's what they say. While burning on the pyre, de Molay cursed King Philip of France and his descendants. So as he experienced his agony, he invoked a curse. So this is
Yeah,
an
and they used to call him Philip the Fair.
yes, yes, fascinating story. I'll probably dig back into the Templars. I was
It
listening to
is, man. And dude, I think there's some kind of linchpin there, bro. I don't know it though.
Well, I'm going to continue to dig into
I
this
feel it.
because
I feel
there's
it.
look something else too. The Templars are credited with being the first international bankers, and also the Jolly Roger, the
Yeah,
pirate ship with the
the
eye
whole
patch.
like checking system
Hmm.
because they were the chaperones, the mercenary chaperones on the way to the Holy Land for the pilgrimage. For dude, me and you, we're doing blue collar work. We weren't doing pilgrimages back then. We were lucky to get bread and rice and shit for our family. These people had money. They were escorting them for pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Of course and they came up with the whole like check system so that they were, like they gave everything to be with the Templars. You give everything and you're in the group. So, but they're still running a business and they're taking money from these people that got, I don't know, castles, villas, chateaus, whatever the fuck you call them over there. But they weren't, the serfs weren't going down there. And so you guys understand what I'm saying, right? So then, bam, they got the whole economic flow, and Philip the Fair, and I forget the Pope's name. In the long run, and I don't even think their run was that long. I think their run started at the end of the 1200s, at the end of the 13th century, and then shortly into the 14th century, the 1300s, they pulled their card and the ATF hit their door.
Well, what's interesting to me is the idea of an underground current. When I was involved in the Thelemic group, they described this as an Egyptian mystery school, and they said the symbol of the torch represents the underground transmission of the sacred knowledge throughout the years, and that you can trace this knowledge, this underground current, through these various organizations who have passed this torch, and that it goes back to Egypt. So the idea that the Templars are burned at the stake means they just went underground, and that their entire order continued to exist, but it wasn't safe to be above the surface. And this is why they explain the need for all the secret handshakes and the initiations and all the secrecy is to protect them from the authorities. And it could all just be mythology, but the idea is they came back. And so this Friday the 13th movie series about this person who dies and he comes back from the dead, I've always wondered, is there some kind of Jacques de Molay revenge theme in this thing? Some kind
There's
of
got to be something there, dude.
That's what I'm
There's
thinking.
got to be something to break down there, dude. Especially with that mask, it's so like in your face.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's something. There is. I'm gonna have to rewatch that. I've considered this
And the
before.
machete. He got the machete. Those guys wielded broadswords, claymores. They were linked to the Scottish. If I'm not mistaken, a broadsword in Scotland was a claymore.
I'll have to look into the origins of Jason Voorhees and that whole the body of symbolism around it, who directed it. But there may be something in there worth looking at. Predictive programming is almost guaranteed to exist in every major movie series and productions. Nothing escapes this illusion. Nothing gets there unless it has utility in the bigger picture, if you ask me.
And then I'm going to throw this in there, man. And I told you this before. From what I heard, when 1307 went down, they had they weren't just they were mercenaries. They were doing pilgrimages. They had horses. They were soldiers. They had boats. And some of the first pirates, the guys that got away from the persecution, were some of the first pirates.
Yes, yes, and the connection between
Because you
skull and
got that thing
bones,
about the islands down in the Bahamas with the banking system.
the connection between the Skull and Bones Society and the Templars um, lies in something else as well. It has to do with how I believe it was when the Templars were buried, they would unbury them later and put their thigh bones in an X below the skull. Have you heard that?
We talked about that before. Yeah, it's called an ossuary or an estuary. They would bury them in a shallow grave and let the bones let them get cleaned, and then they'd stack them. Allegedly, I'm not an anthropologist, okay? And they'd stack them, and the femurs will be on the top with the skull sitting on them. And it was some sort of bone stacking, and they called that grave when it was done like an estuary, an ossuary, or something.
Now let me ask you, when you see all these celebrities doing the X's over their chest with their arms, um, do you think it might have a significance here? Because you're kind of making a cross beneath your skull when you do it with your head down. Because that's how Masons pray. Within the Masonic temple, they cross their arms over their chest and they put their head down.
Well, I know what you're talking about.
Mormons too.
I
I
think
think
I think
Mormons
I think I think Hollywood's full of puppets.
doesn't isn't it true that the Mormons pray with their arms crossed over their chests?
Well, it's funny you're bringing up them because when we first started this Templar thing, and you brought up the church of Notre Dame, and we were like, yeah, the Mason on the top is the B. And when you go through Utah, they got these weird freaking. You're out there, bro. You're in New Mexico. I love Arizona. I can't wait to visit New Mexico, but I love Arizona. And I've been through Utah, and their highway signs. I think it's 15 or whatever, right? Their highway signs got the beehive on them for Utah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. And by the way, do you know
Right? You're out there, right?
Joseph Smith? Yeah, the Beehive State, and
Right, Tim.
The Beehive State,
Like
and
you're out there. You're right there, bro.
I'm not.
I'm
I'm
sure
not.
you've driven through Utah.
No, I have not.
Do they still have those signs?
I don't think I have, but I'm somewhat close if I go to the Four Corners.
All right, so
But
maybe the last time you drove through there was the last time, because I used to live on the West Coast. They got. I would love to go out there again.
okay, so it's the
And
Beehive State, and then if you look
I
at the
I, I didn't
Beehive,
even know about this esoteric stuff when I was back then, and I'm like, dude, what's up with this beehive on their fucking state highway signs?
well, the symbol of the Beehive is from Templar history. It symbolizes. Here we go.
Compartmentalization.
No, it says yeah. The Beehive stands as an emblem for Freemasonry. It also displays a lesson in industry unity. Fascinating. But anyway, it is their symbol. And
Compartmentalization, right?
Joseph Smith was also
Right, brother. Compartmentalization.
yeah, that's what the hive is, and of course the hive mind.
The
The
queen is the eye on the top of the pyramid.
and Smith was a Mason. More, in fact, I would describe Mormonism as
Yeah,
Masonic.
he's got a crazy story, dude. He's like, didn't they like hunt him down in Ohio and kill him?
Yeah, I was told that he was tarred and feathered, and it's reported that he gave the grand hailing sign of distress, which suggests to me that he was probably a fake martyr, if anything. I don't know if he was really
What's the grand hailing sign of distress? The white flag, or are you talking about something else?
No, no. When someone is raised in Freemasonry, the character who fake dies, the initiate, his line is when he's accosted by the three ruffians who come to take the King Solomon's blueprint, is to raise his hands up, like hands up, don't shoot. And then he says,
Yeah.
"Is there no help for the widow's son?" Now
The
that
widow. I.
now that expression is whenever you say that with your hands up, it sends a signal to anyone who's Masonic that this is a brother in distress, and they're obliged to put down whatever they're doing and help that person. So the hands up, don't shoot is actually a Masonic distress sign. So the fact is, historically, according to the lore, Joseph Smith gave that sign, which suggests to me that his death was some kind of a Masonic hoax to create a martyr for the cult.
So what I heard was, and this was a while ago, so I don't know, but he had his Utah thing with the Mormons, and something went sour because he was a Mason first, and somehow he ran back to Ohio or somewhere around there, and they caught him and killed him.
Yeah, again, I'm inclined to think that his death was a psyop hoax, kind of like uh, any other religious cult figure.
Of course, I mean, yeah,
And
I mean,
and I'm
but the
saying though is that the
yeah, I
fact that he
mean,
said the fact that he gave that sign shows that it was specifically within the Masonic context. And Mormonism also is replete with Masonic symbolism. Look at the underwear they wear.
yeah, yeah. That's what I'm kind of. I mean, I don't know what happened, but uh, I didn't even hear about the whole hands up um widow's son thing. I've always heard about widow's son, but I didn't realize it was linked to what's his name?
Joseph Smith. Yeah, according to Joseph Smith, he gave the mail
Joseph Smith.
he
Yeah,
gave the
I didn't realize it was linked to Joseph Smith. I know he was the Mormon guy, and like it was like he started Mormonism, and like he's a Mason. And I mean, look, everybody's a human being on this planet that walks up, with their feet. So I don't care what you do. I just heard the story about him, and it's like it was weird.
well, there's more
It's like
to it.
he was a Mason first, and then
Yeah,
and then
he
like they're
and
chasing him back somewhere, and
Brigham Young.
the hands up,
Yeah,
I'm a widow's son thing. Like, yeah, only certain people know the widow's son thing, but everybody knows the hands up. Don't shoot.
yeah, I believe that. Okay, now there's more because I think the hands up, don't shoot is 100% the Masonic signs, and I think what it's saying is that this is a Masonic operation. This is a psyop, and I think that's also with the kneeling when they're kneeling, the BLM's kneeling in
Well, we
1312.
know that was a psyop, dude. That was so
But no, but I
ridiculous,
mean it's
dude.
specifically connected to the Templar symbolism, is what I'm saying. It's all Templar.
Yeah, they're all. It's compartmentalization. They're all. It's that's the beauty of it, right? They're all. It's like AI, dude. It's like it's organic compartmentalization where these dudes may not even realize they're connected to one another, and they're working consecutively. That's the best way I can articulate it in my spiritual perspective.
Well, all very interesting. Again, interesting rabbit trails. We should definitely continue to talk about the Templars. I'm very interested in the Old Man in the Mountain, the Hashishin cult, and the introduction of the art of assassination into modern
Ooh,
secret societies from
wow,
there in exchange.
you're getting me excited here, bro.
Yeah, we have to get into that stuff. That's all interesting. Also, the
The
Black
old man in
Madonna.
the mountain.
Yeah, yeah.
What's up with that?
We'll talk about that. The Hashishin cults,
So, cause you know
the
what,
Black
I
Madonna.
got. I don't know if you know, dude. You were bringing up the flame passing, right? The torch passing.
Yes.
I got a picture I want to send you. Like right when you were talking about it, it's something I got right now, right? So, and then it made me think of John D. When I was like researching John D. and Francis Bacon, there's this passing of the lantern.
Oh, interesting. Passing. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now, yes, because the in
What's
symbolism.
what's the best what's the best email? I don't want to like if there's some way you could tell me there's the best email to hit you on because I
Yeah,
hit
hit me
you
up
on your
on
emails,
in
dude. And,
infiniteplainsociety@gmail.com. I always
all
get
right,
that. I always get that.
all right.
And so yeah, the idea here is the head of the Order of the Assassins, Hassan Sabah. They called him the Old Man in the Mountain. There's these references to him, but the idea here is that he was somehow involved in the cultural exchange with Templars, and through this Hashishin cult, which had perfected assassination, it kind of got merged within the Templars, and the idea is that somehow all these Masonic ritual killings, like of JFK, etc., have their origin in this Hashishin cult merging with the West, with the Freemasonic lore. It's an interesting story, but this was brought up by James Shelby downward when he was talking about King Kill 33. But again, this is another rabbit trail, the whole Hashishin assassin, so the word comes from. And I think there's a lot of video games that put a lot of this symbolism out there in public. But it's clear that it's Templars everywhere. Templars are a really common theme, whether it's Thelema, Church of Satan, Skull and Bones, Freemasonry.
They were boys with the Muslims, bro. You know that.
I mean, if
They learned a lot of their tricks from the dudes they are allegedly fighting. The Crusades, right? Christianity, Catholicism versus Islam. From everything I heard, bro, they were fighting them, but they also were like chilling with them and learning shit. And I'm not saying there's all this credit that needs to be paid to Islam, which there is, but I'm not saying that's
wasn't Muhammad married to a 6-year-old?
Whatever, yeah, dude. Like they were all in the whatever it is when you got multiple wives. Like that's what the Mormons were about, right?
Yep. Joseph Smith, 27
so
wives.
like, yeah. So is it that like outside of the box of a thought to have? Like whatever, dude. Like that was back during like the patriarchy. And of course, the dude's gonna have multiple women if he can. Like like it's right or it's not. Everything's got a good side and a bad side. Like like I'm not saying it's good or not, whatever. But these streams of trends they just mesh together, and it's all fundamental.
It's
like
interesting to look at it. Though.
It's all fundamental research, dude. It's all fundamental research. Like
take today and then trace back the roots of these secret societies, and that's what I'm like looking at now. Is like you're like, well, this thread connects.
But my point was they were boys with who was the Crusader chief for the Muslims? I can't remember. It was like his name was like.
Yeah, and look, this is all. Like, a lot of this stuff is.
You know what I'm talking about,
a lot
dude.
Of this
you know that name.
A lot of this is history, and I'm very much a fan of history and researching history. But I also have to keep in mind that there's a point when we go back in the timelines, we have to recognize that we're dealing with officially sanctioned establishment lore, which conceals as much as it reveals, if not more. But I just checked out this movie but
you don't think they were boys behind the scenes? Because that's how it goes. It's a big trick.
If what you mean is there was a cultural exchange, yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of where this mix gets in with the Templars and the Assassins, that it was through this exchange.
That's all I was just bolstering your thought.
Yeah, not the art of assassination, the thuggies. It's all very interesting, but overall, I think the common thread of Skull and Bones Society is with the Templars and the Satanists and the Thelemites. It all points to one thing: that the Masons aren't just a club of guys who want to get away from their wives on Wednesday and have steak. Like, it's not just a charity and a fraternity. Its roots matter, and its pervasiveness matters. And this recent article or podcast I listened to about J.D. Salinger's book, Catcher in the Rye, just shows you how pervasive it is. And so, yeah, I think this is a worthwhile rabbit trail.
Networking.
Exactly.
Networking resources within the club, within the I don't want to say fraternal, but yeah, fraternal orders, the compartmentalization, the structure, the multi-level marketing,
Yes, globally, all the secret societies
What did you just say? What was the thing you just said before I said that? It was made me think of something about J.D. Salinger. Catcher in the Rye.
Catcher in the Rye.
Dude, I always heard the MK Ultra people would read that book. Dude, I mean, isn't that a thing? I've always heard that.
It's been associated with that.
Always,
exactly. The conspiracy theory movie with Mel
they're
Gibson.
Like, MK Ultra dude, he had a Catcher in the Rye book on him.
Yeah, the Mel Gibson movie Conspiracy Theory. They bring this up. It's brought up in 6 Degrees of Separation, and what this Joseph Atwill did is he.
I never read that book though, dude.
Okay, well, I read it a few years ago, but look,
I don't know.
I read the book, and even though I'm very well aware of the symbolism of Freemasonry and all these other cults, I read the book. I didn't pick up any of it. And that's, why, is because that's before I
Probably
started.
one of them books, dude. Like you ever read a book, bro, and it takes you forever to get through it?
No, no, no. This is like a pocket-sized book. And I read the book word for word. I thought it was interesting, but I didn't catch the subtext. And now the reason why I didn't was back then, I wasn't critically examining media the way I do now. I wasn't looking at it as
Well,
programming.
now I gotta read it, bro. Now I have to read it.
I recommend it for that reason, but what you'd have to look for,
You think if I get it on Audible, it'll be the same as reading it?
it may be, although what Joseph Atwill does is he does a textual analysis and he's like, this phrase is repeated 3 times. So, yeah, as long as you're paying attention to what could be said behind these things. But what he arrived at was this book is a calling card for Masonic hitmen. That it's a Masonic hit.
Okay,
If
like
the kill, yeah, in other words,
Hitman,
like
like
assassinations.
and what
Okay,
and what
okay.
objective?
Mark Chapman had a
No, that's what I'm saying. I always heard it was MK Ultra.
okay. Mark
So you're
Chapman.
saying
Mark
the main
Chapman.
objective, huh?
Mark Chapman had a copy of this book, and he kills John Lennon. And some are like, oh, this is an indication of mind control or something. Well, some would say this is a calling card that he had to be taken out by the cult. And some point out that there was this cryptic interview he gave before his death where he said, I liked the craftsman, but I wouldn't want to become one. And the
Who
craftsman,
said that?
John Lennon, and the Masonic craft, they
He
call
had the book, or the dude had the book,
the,
Chapman.
the, the killer had the book. And so before the killer
Yeah,
took, so
that's what I'm familiar with.
right before his death, in his interview, he said he wouldn't want to be a craftsman. Well, that's what the Masons call themselves, the craftsmen. You're part of the
Of
craft.
course, dude.
And so what I'm suggesting,
Yeah.
what is suggested by Joseph Atwill, is that John Lennon was not under their control. And when he said, I wouldn't want to be a craftsman, although I like some of them, that it was sort of he was saying too much.
Wait,
And then he was
wait.
killed
So wait, he went. He said that when?
before his death. He was doing some interview.
Like on death row?
No, John Lennon, before he died, said he wouldn't want to be a
Oh,
craftsman. And then shortly after, he gets killed, and the killer has a book that contains some kind of
well,
subtext about the
he must have been in
about
some
the
club, right?
about the craftsman who the Masonic hitman. So there's a
That's
interesting
right.
thread there.
Oh boy. He must. Yeah. All right.
But I look, I read the book. I didn't catch
I
any
mean,
of it.
we know these dudes are all. I always said preliminarily when I started jumping in, putting my toe in, I'm like, these dudes are wind-up toys.
Well, look, it's easy. That's what I would think too. Okay, the MK Ultra idea is that you have sleeper agents who can be given a code word and they go do a killing. Well, look, you don't need magic. You don't need like special mind control to take over somebody's mind. You just need them to be in your cult. Gang killings happen all the time. The mind,
Neuro-linguistic programming.
yeah, mind control is simpler than people think. We're way more mind controllable. And
I brought this up before, dude. A pimp and a hoe. You beat her and she listens to you. I hate to say it, but
well, there's various levels of
those
control. See,
cults. Would you want to be in a cult, dude?
well, there's
Who wants to be in a cult? They do freaky shit and then they just do
well,
what they do it.
there's force, but then the kind of control that they use now is far more powerful. They're controlling us at the level of the
You can force the mind, right?
subconscious mind.
Force the mind.
They control you subconsciously. They control your conscious mind. They control your bodies. No need to hit you.
1984. 4 is 5.
Well, hey, I got a few people trying to get in here, so appreciate the call very much. I think we'll
Yeah,
continue
hit
to
him,
delve
bro.
down
Hit
these
him,
trails.
bro.
All right, have a good
Yeah.
Saturday. Thanks for the call. All right, everyone, that's G33. Andrew Selman here says, hello, auto hoaxers from the UK, whatever that means. We live on an infinite plane, obviously. Yeah, so this is the thing. And the term auto hoaxer was a pejorative. What happened was a lot of people were figuring out that these events were fake. But most people would say, don't call it fake until we've given time for the people who've been affected to grieve. Think about the actors. So there's been this continual theme, and this has been like just a repeated thing that went on for years, where people calling it fake are being insensitive. The people who are calling it fake are perhaps even discrediting the rest of us. So they said, hey, you auto hoaxers are discrediting us. So auto hoaxer was like a bad thing to be. And at one point, I realized that we're right, that we are right 100% of the time, that we haven't been proven wrong. So maybe there's something else to this. Maybe we shouldn't just be dismissive of this reflexive calling it fake. And what eventually happened was I was interviewed by Mick Media, and Mick Media heard me describe how there are two basic categories of people: people who automatically believe the news, and that would be the auto hoaxers. I mean, auto believers. Like, I automatically believe it, I'm an auto believer. But the auto hoaxers are those who are like automatically calling it fake. So again, this was not meant to be it wasn't meant to be like a good thing to be. You know, you're an auto hoaxer, it's a bad thing. But we just kind of took on the term. And we're like, yeah, this is actually not a bad thing. To be an auto hoaxer is to be a skeptic. Because it turns out that skepticism, in its original sense, that true skepticism, has always been about suspending judgment. That's all. The suspension of judgment until you arrive at a conclusion, hopefully with more facts. Well, you're not allowed to suspend judgment today. If you're a conspiracy theorist, you better believe the story as it happens or believe the alternative version. Don't question it. Just question the mainstream. And if you're mainstream, it's sort of the same thing. If you're a mainstreamer, you've got to automatically believe whatever's on the news and automatically reject the conspiracy theories. So this automatic processing of media is the real problem here. The real issue here is the lack of personal judgment, personal discernment, the lack of somebody actually thinking before they believe it. Think before you believe. But no, that's considered, I think that's, is it thought crime? Is what you would call that? That's thought crime. Well, after this Mick Media interview, I decided that I'm no longer going to merely um, take their word for it anymore. Like, from that point on, I'm like, no, this is like a philosophical posture. So Mick Media did this interview, and they said, in a very kind of insulting way, that I was anti-authoritarian, or that I couldn't confront the horrors of reality and I had to invent stories to make it seem fake. Like, they really tried that with me. And I'm like, I'm someone who spent several years, my military MOS was 92 Mike. So I'm not unfamiliar with dead bodies. Then I become an embalmer, a decedent transporter. I have no problem confronting horror, death, tragedy. Like, I understand we live, we die, etc. But uh, I'm not doing this as some kind of defense mechanism. Like, oh, I can't believe these kids died, so I got to make up a story where they're still alive on some crisis actor island. No, this isn't escapism, but that's the best they could do. But again, they described me as an auto hoaxer, and I'm like, yeah, that's what we are. Auto hoaxer, GTFO. We are skeptics, and this is skepticism in the pure sense. Piro, the original skeptics, they figured this out, that the path to peace of mind is is nothing more than refusing to accept horrors or distant tragedies that you can't verify, because a lot of the time it's hype, a lot of the time it's manipulation. And so if you disengage from the reflexive, I'm going to automatically believe everything, you can actually remove yourself from a lot of the internal chaos that really constitutes the new normal. It's a roller coaster ride. So I stepped off the roller coaster. Now, if you're not auto hoaxing, you're not paying attention. If you're not suspending judgment, like, let's say there's something on the news and something blows up, and you're like, oh, I believe it happened. Okay, well, why do you believe it? If it's an extraordinary claim, there should be some doubt. If it's fitting a pattern, if it was predicted in the movie you just watched last night and it completely matches it, yeah, there's reasons for doubting. But what I'm not saying is that we call everything fake. That's the opposite of skepticism. That's just as bad as automatically believing everything. You can't call something fake unless you know why it's fake. If you can explain how it's fakeable, what the agenda is. So there's a big distinction here to be made too between those of us calling things fake fake and those who call everything fake. See, I'm an informed disbeliever. I know why I don't believe in that. Whereas these people just don't believe in it. And if they try, and this is what they're doing, they're discrediting people who call things fake. Well, what's that really doing? They're trying to discredit your ability to call lies lies. A lie is a lie. Fake is fake. But I'm not saying we can just categorically reject it all. Because good liars don't lie with every breath. They only lie when it's advantageous, when there's a strategic reason for doing so. If they lied with every breath, you wouldn't trust them to be your reality filter. You wouldn't trust them to inform you. So they gain your trust by reporting factually. Oh, the sky is blue today. Traffic is bad today. So you're given this constant ambient background noise of information that comports with my reality, and it seems to fit. But then the extraordinary things happen, like 500 people were shot in this theater by these two ISIS terrorists, or 1,500 children were burned in this wildfire caused by climate change. So these agendas come out, these events come out with an agenda. Like instantly, environmentalists are running amok. Instantly, anti-gun advocates are running amok. So you have these automatic responses to the fake news that it shows you how it's all propaganda meant to lead you somewhere. Perception management. So we're effectively calling out and separating from the news the perception management operations, the psyops. That's what we're doing. We're filtering out the augmentations, that which isn't real. So we're the only ones doing this. Lloyd says, you carry skepticism too far, refusing to accept a working hypothesis as a theory, believing is always an error. No, I don't take it too far. You don't take it far enough. You may be skeptical of the mainstream, you may be skeptical of Dr. Fauci, but you're not skeptical of alt media approved anti-vaxxers. You're not skeptical of alt media critiques of, in other words, your skepticism should not be partisan. Your skepticism needs to be pointed at your own side as well. And the problem is, there is no skeptical media within the world stage framework. It doesn't exist. It can't exist. It cannot exist. So I'm not carrying skepticism too far. I'm applying it accurately. Skepticism is not the same as not believing. It means suspending belief. So I'm like, oh, I don't believe that. But then if the facts support it, I will. So far, the facts have not supported 5G phobia, which I believe you might have been a proponent of. The facts have not supported sky phobia, whether from climate change or chemtrails. So no, I suspend judgment, but if the facts arrive, yeah, show me the globe. I'm in. Show me the climate change. Show me the cow flatulence that drowns polar bears, and I'm in. Show me the cirrus clouds that make you sick, and I'm in. But I'll be suspending. Andrew Solomon says, it's so obvious at this point that we're living through a world stage script, not scripture. Yes, scripture is another world stage script. It's the OG fake news. Now, one more point about this. Some people will say you can't say it's all scripted. Saying it's all scripted is not really a good way of putting it. It's like saying it's all fake. However, what I think is important to mention here is that our history is all scripted. If it doesn't comport, it's not getting in. And moreover, it's completely fakeable. History is fakeable. They can pre-script events. Some people say there's no way they could have scripted this. Well, you agree that that fake shooting happened, which means you had a storyline. Mad kid with a bowl cut and a big gun goes to school one day and shoots a bunch of people. Okay, well, that's a script. Now, this script was acted out on a certain day, and the news media broadcasted this thing as a real event. So now you have a fake simulation scripted event played out real time. And now this real time event goes into history. So now it's a historical fact that this event happened, and it changes how we view guns. It stirs the pot. It moves various agendas forward, both anti and pro. So in other words, our history can easily be tampered with. They do it all the time. The trouble is, those who aren't skeptical enough aren't recognizing just how fakeable it all is and the sheer magnitude of the fakery. Like, it's way, way faker than anybody imagines in Trutherville. Like, oh, mainstream's fake. Yeah, wait till you find out till alt media is fake. Wait till you find out how alt media is not only faker than mainstream, but it's a subset of mainstream thought. That you cannot escape the mainstream by running to alt media. I know you're amused or even frightened by the alternative shadows on the wall, but it's no closer to the truth than the Normieville shadows on the wall. Lloyd Miller says, I want 5G studies investigated. Sure, just don't burn them down. I don't think that people were really doing this, but there was a story in 2020 that 77 5G towers were burned. And this is like when they really started the idea that conspiracy theories are dangerous. 5G conspiracy theorists lead to 77 towers damaged. Conspiracy theorists burning 5G towers. 77 phone masts attacked in the UK. And this is because some people, not naming names, um, would say that these things are spreading the thing. That the virus is coming from. Look, it's obviously a trap, though. They give you this story that sounds somewhat plausible, science fiction-y. You repeat it, you get censored, you get scapegoated for whatever they do. I'm catching up on your comments here. All right, let's see here. And Lloyd, to answer your statement here, tell me where we have carried skepticism too far if we've avoided facts, and I will obviously make adjustments. Oh, really? You don't say, says, what if someone doesn't want to be embalmed? Seems like a weird ritualistic thing to do to people. Yeah, look, my opinion on it is I'm not into it. I've done many of them. I was considering a career out of it. I'd done it for several years, but I'm not really a huge proponent of it, and it's not the only option. In fact, there's this new look. If I had another, I guess let's say I was fired. IPS fires me. I might get back into the business of green funerals. Like I've seen these dry ice funerals that are like environmentally friendly. It's got to be a huge uh, business that might take over all these gaudy ceremonies with expensive caskets and chemicals thrown into the earth. I see an opening. But you can opt out. The only reason it's required is for a public viewing. It's a sanitation thing. But for the most part, it's an art. Maybe you want to have a viewing, but you have to have a, again, I don't know. I think it's weird, to be honest. I never liked it. I was good at it. But you can certainly opt out. You've got plenty of options. Just call your local funeral provider and ask them what the alternatives are. Direct burial, incineration. One more point since we're on the topic. When I was working, I would deliver the bodies to the crematory, way out at the edge of town. And one, one thing here, they use afterburners, so you don't see black smoke. Because during 2020, 2021, there were all kinds of stories like there are so many deaths that they're just throwing them all in the crematories and they're overflowing, and there's black smoke covering the skies. All these stories were fake. Second thing, when I was delivering, I talked to the groundskeeper at one of the cemeteries, and he was explaining to me how in the Jewish section they don't use burial vaults. And I understood this because when we would have these cases, I wouldn't be doing the embalming. They would have people from their synagogue come in, and they would not use metal implements. Like we had that S-shaped metal needle for sewing. No, they had like whalebone or something. And they wrap the person in cloth, and they go into a pine casket or pine coffin, and it goes directly into the ground. No burial vault. So that section of the cemetery wouldn't be as level as the rest. And so these burial vaults are these big black vaults that you put, well, they're plastic, or you could get cement, but they got these standardized plastic vaults that they put over the coffin, and then they put the dirt on top of that. And that allows them to have a flat, level cemetery. It's to maintain the property because otherwise the coffin would implode and the grounds would then have a divot in it. You could fall into a hole in the ground. It would be a disaster. My point is, I've seen warehouses full of these things, these burial vaults. But when I used to listen to Alex Jones, he would talk about, quote, FEMA coffins, like FEMA coffins. They're using FEMA coffins. And like, wait a minute, FEMA coffins? And people would show these pictures of these trucks transporting these burial vaults, and they would call them FEMA coffins. It's not hard to find. Here's an example. There's a whole book on it, FEMA coffins and the Anunnaki. Here's another picture of it. FEMA camps, coffins closed up. So people share pictures of these burial vaults, and they call them FEMA coffins. So no, these are not coffins for FEMA camps. And the idea was that you could put 10 people in each one. They're so big. How many pallbearers would you need to carry 10 corpses? Like 60? Give me a break. So no, these aren't even used. They couldn't be used to transport bodies. And finally, if they're going to kill everybody, why are they going to give you funerals? Why are they going to give you coffins? Wouldn't they just toss you in a hole? Wouldn't they just melt you in place or whatever they're going to do? But when I debunked this one, I debunked FEMA coffins, and I believed in FEMA coffins for a long time. Alex Jones had me convinced that FEMA was lining up coffins in secret warehouses and guillotines, and they're going to chop off our heads and throw us in these coffins. So I debunked this one, and I brought it up on Twitter, and I'm showing all these truthers, QAnoners. I'm like, hey, look, guys, no such thing as FEMA coffins. And I was called a shill. I'm like, nothing to worry about. They call me a shill. Kind of like chemtrail. There's no chemtrails. Oh, you're a shill for the airlines. Or you're whatever you are when you're not agreeing with somebody who's right. So I'm bad for telling the truth. There's no such thing as FEMA coffins. And you've already been to FEMA camp, by the way, and you probably enjoyed yourself. FEMA camp was lockdown 2020. They decentralized the FEMA camps. Now it's a home FEMA camp. You don't need a prisoner situation with a guard and a cell and all kinds of, like in a big camp where they're resisting. No, the way they did it is they get you to lock down not knowing you're a prisoner, not seeing it in that way. And of course, they provide you with Netflix and popcorn and Uber Dash and stimmy checks. So you were able to get nice and comfortable in your home FEMA camp. And we all camped out together. And we gained our COVID 19 pounds from being sedentary. All right, moving on here. Dewis and Paris says, suspend judgment for sure, but don't be afraid of the puzzle pieces. Sure, agree. I'm not a reality denialist. It's the last thing that you could accuse me of. Like, I'm the one who will be the top chemtrail activist if you can prove to me they exist. Joined by X322. Lloyd Miller says, you think the establishment isn't really going to confiscate guns? Not really depopulate? Why do they need your guns? They already have your minds. Anybody who's worried about their guns being confiscated have already ceded total control and power, and they're already kneeling before Big Brother's black monolith. They're already kneeling before its altar. Their head's in the box. They're in the cult. The gun is a prop. The AR-15, yeah, I understand self-defense, kill burglars. Sure, I believe in that. There has to be justice. There has to be the right to defend yourself. Certain segments of the population probably should go through a wood chipper. Like, no one disagrees with this. But the paranoia about the government's taking your guns is the reason for all these various psyops. They want you to think they're going to take your guns. And they want the left to think if they don't take the guns, their children are going to die. They need this dichotomy. They need this split. Half the country fears guns. Half the country is fetishizing guns. And they need this dialectic. Guns are emblematic of the right, of toxic masculinity, active phallic symbol. And then the left, they embrace the needle, which is a symbol of submission, passivity, trust in government. And the right's like, no, you need the gun to protect you from the government. So which is it? Government protects you, or you need to protect yourself from the government? You see how perfectly down the middle it is? They're not going to destroy that dynamic by taking away the guns. They're not going to destroy that dynamic by force poking everybody. They want half to be anti, half to be pro on every single issue. So I'm anti-pro, anti-anti. I'm anti-pro needle, I'm anti-pro 2A in the sense that it's a worthless controlled opposition position to take. It truly is. And I'm not taking sides. So no, I'm not worried about depopulation. In fact, the depopulation is another example of where they try to scare you with scarcity. Oh, we're running out of people. And not only that, but I believe that President Barack Obama was widely credited as being one of the top gun salesmen of all time. Let me see if I can find that. Oh yeah, that was from CNBC. Obama, best gun salesman on earth. Paul Bastine, owner of Ultimate Defense Firing Range in St. Peters, Missouri, says every time Obama talks about guns, sales go up. From ammo.com infographic, Obama, greatest gun salesman in America. So tell me again about your gun insecurity. They're going to take your guns. You have the right wing marching, they're going to take our guns, and the left wing's marching, they're going to regulate our wombs. Guns versus wombs. Male, female, masculine, active, female, passive, feminine, passive. Womb. Well, what is the womb to the gun? Well, the gun's a phallic symbol. So each side is worried the other side's going to regulate or grab its junk. There's this mutual dread of one another's agenda. They're going to regulate our wombs. They're going to regulate our guns. You see, it's all Freudian. If you look beneath the hood here, they're tapping into our insecurities at the deepest possible levels. So it's not even about guns. It's about control. And they want each side to control the other side, so they control both sides. So again, your guns are safe. Nicotrauma says exactly. They need the guns to maintain the split in society. Absolutely. Oh, really? You don't say, says? They do the same with abortion. I'm surprised Trump wasn't given credit for most abortions. Yep. Now, as far as these doomsday scenarios, like they're going to take the guns, that all goes back to Waco and the ATF. And that's why the right is always mad at the ATF and the FBI. This is part of their whole creation myth, their founding, where they come from. You're looking at Waco, where Trump kicked off his campaign. Remember, this was recently. Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco, calls it the last battle. And the night before, Netflix released Waco, American Apocalypse. And you can look on the trailer. It's like the ATF had to go in because of a weapons violation. They had 1.6 million rounds. 1.6? Like as in January 6? And then Waco, Dave Koresh, 33-year-old, incinerated. They believed he was Jesus. So 33, Burning Man, Jesus, martyr of a cult. Alex Jones was there right after. Timothy McVeigh was a part of that. McVeigh incinerated at 33, electric chair. We're talking about like the OBL of white nationalism. And then Alex Jones getting his start there, building up the Branch Davidian Church again, radicalized against the government. So Alex Jones becomes the face of they're gonna take your guns. He goes on to Piers Morgan, and he says to Piers Morgan, the government just bought 1.6, there's that number again, 1.6 billion rounds. And if you try to take the guns, 1776 will commence again. So that was a few years ago. Again, 1.6, 1.6, 1.6. January 6 happens, and who's there? Alex Jones with signs. 1776 is commencing again. So this is all story, this is all narrative. They're never going to take the guns, obviously. The whole January 6th thing was predicted. It was going to happen in that way because it was scripted and fake top to bottom. Not a coincidence that Dominion, the voting machine company, sued Fox News over January 6th, over the election denial stuff, which led to January 6th. Anyone care to guess how much they got sued for? Oh, look at that. The $1.6 billion defamation suit, Dominion versus Fox. I have a mind map of all the 1.6s that connect with this agenda that show that this goes back a long time. Ollie Goering says, taking away the guns equals forced castration. Yeah, that's what the feminists are going to castrate you. They're against your toxic masculinity. They want to see the Ken dollification of the American male. Barbie feminism, the Barbie movie. She ends up a real woman at the end. The very last word in the movie is gynecologist because she asks for one because now she has something. But Ken, yeah, he's still just a nub because he's been destroyed by Barbie feminism. They took away his guns. So yeah, absolutely, they're gonna castrate you. Similarly, the whole abortion thing is about men controlling women at that fundamental level. So these are primal fears. These are deep fears. These are deep insecurities that happen into. And look how each side wants to do it to the other. Yeah, we're going to regulate your wombs and you're going to regulate our guns. They're never going to get along. And these are all alchemical principles. Male, female in this context is really just active, passive. And the left is passive. The left is open, porous, open borders, open skin, open minds to a fault, and unconstrained in their vision. Whereas the right is conservative, closed borders, closed skin, and very much anti government instead of pro, in the sense that they believe that the government that governs least governs best. We've got to minimize governmental influence. They scapegoat the government for anything that happens. Anyway, we've discussed this at length, but this schism is part of the infrastructure of our world stage, our internal concept. I even believe that the political horseshoe theory, it's not a theory, it's the model. They built a political horseshoe. And people like Jones is there to keep you on the political horseshoe on the right side. Skyfish said, that's when I realized AJ was an actor with the Pierce Morgan skit. Great way to describe it. A skit. But I remember seeing that too. That was like a little overblown. But this thing boiled down to Alex Jones was mad because the ATF had 1.6 billion hollow point rounds, or they had some acquisition, and he'd referenced that. And so looking back, you can see the clues, what his role was all along. That's why he's there with Sandy Hook. So he's like, oh yeah, they did Sandy Hook because they want to take your guns. No, they did Sandy Hook because they're maintaining a mind war dialectic. Dewis and Paris says, in fairness, they disarmed Australia on the trail of a shooter psyop. Okay, well, what happened afterward? Did the New World Order depopulate Australia? No. No. And I'm saying it's kind of a false dilemma here. I mean, if they take the guns, the doomsday scenario promised by Alex Jones isn't going to happen. The threat of taking the guns is the weapon. That's Rules for Radicals, Saul Alinsky, number 9. The threat of the thing is more powerful than the thing. So they don't have to. In fact, they can point to that, and they do, to hype up the fear. Alex Jones on Piers Morgan is like, Hitler took the guns, Mao took the guns, and if you try to take the guns here, we're going to 1776 you. I'm like, okay. It's all part of the hype. Because his whole point is the rest of the world has capitulated to the New World Order, and they've all self-castrated because they don't have their guns. But you, the American patriots, are the last firewall against tyranny. You and your AR-15s are all that stand between the globalists and world domination. It's a powerful pitch because now info warriors are standing guard against tyranny with their AR-15s. It's all mythology. Lloyd says, but they want a castrated population to rule. Real castration used to be done by tyrants of the past. Well, if you look at the general pattern of things, they sell you the things that they can't get you to do. Like, so they can't get you to acquiesce to total surveillance or putting all of your thoughts out there in public for everybody, total transparency. No, people used to value privacy. So they sold us, and this is all Edward Bernays. Again, relative of the founder of Netflix, Edward Bernays, propaganda. In his book, he wrote all about how the mass mind can be influenced with these perception management operations, and they made cigarettes a symbol of women's liberation, liberty torches. They put bacon on tables for breakfast. They can change our behaviors en masse. So they trained us, they conditioned us to see privacy as a commodity, something to sell, something that's worthless unless your idea of privacy today is like doesn't exist. But it's not because Big Brother put cameras everywhere. It's because you put cameras everywhere. They don't even need to do any kind of ministry of love, inquisition style torture sessions to find out what's in your head. They just go to your social media. Netflix purchased your Facebook DMs. Netflix bought your DMs. And not only that, but they also bought your browsing history. Facebook let Netflix see user DM direct messages. They let users peek. This is insane. This is a court document. Meta allowed Netflix to peer into Facebook users' direct messages for a decade. Imagine the information that they have available to them. Thank you, Do Us Some Para. Appreciate that. Andrew Selman, Alex Jones in a fake court. Alex Jones is a fake canary in a fake coal mine. He's not a canary in a coal mine for free speech. He's running around a very big tree in a forest of fake trees. He's like, hey, look at this tree here. Pay attention to this tree. This one's fake. But he doesn't notice that the rest of the forest is also fake. That's his job. It's a red herring. Yes, we can stop talking about Alex Jones, says James Osmond. Great suggestion. Let's put a moratorium on Jones. Let's put a moratorium on Taylor Swift and chemtrails. The only reason we bring him up, it's not about him, the individual. It's about all media's gatekeeping operation, but there are other characters. Mindy Robinson, Stu Peters. There's a whole slew of them to talk about. He's not even the major voice. Who actually references him? Other than the mainstream. I've seen his newsletters every day. They're always the same. Emergency broadcast, World War III starts in a few minutes. When? But no, this is much bigger than this one person, and it's important not to fall into the trap. But I'm just pointing out that he has been one of the most effective agents. If you look at, like, we can stop talking about him, sure, but you have to remember that until he emerged, there wasn't a methodology for approaching media in the way truthers do. False flag theory, for example. He brought that out there. Oh, it's not real, it's a false flag. Well, what does that mean? It means it's real, but somebody else did it. So what he had done is he created a methodology for truthers to approach mass media. And what this has done is it's created an entire segment of alternatively misinformed people. But I pay attention to all of the different platforms, left and right. Mr. Trustworthy says the Empire State Building is on the 33rd Street. Didn't know that. And isn't the AT&T building, the Batman building, isn't that at 33rd Street? Oh no, it's 333. Nothing about the architecture is, when it comes to a lot of these various psyops, you'll see various buildings and movies. A lot of these bits of architecture are also part of the program. Masonic architects, we're talking about symbolism in plain sight. The World Trade Tower. A lot of these things are part of multi-generational, ongoing psychological operations that tell stories like the Twin Towers, 33 years from creation to destruction. The new tower comes up. Do you know what they were originally going to call the new tower? The One World Trade Tower, which rose in the ashes of the twins, and it opened up on 11/3/2014, so 13 years later. Originally, and Donald Trump was actually a part of this. Originally, they were going to call it the Phoenix Building. The One World Trade Tower had some various. Here we go. This is the Wikipedia. But there was a point when they were tossing around names, and Donald Trump was getting behind one of them, and it was going to be something with the name Phoenix was going to be put into it, which would probably have given away too much of the plot here. The death, resurrection symbolism. There's a lot here we can go into about it. A lot of people have noted that it looks like a syringe. And the word syringe comes from the Greek word syrinx, which refers to Pan's flute. Pandemic, again, Pan, god of panic. And of course, the the flute, the syringe, the symbol of this thing, of the one world order, it's all pretty much neatly wrapped into that. And you could even go further. During its construction, it was making noise when the wind would blow through it. It functioned as a massive pipe. And for years, people were talking about how this One World Trade Tower was ghostly. Like the noises they heard was like the ghosts of 9/11. So it was quite literally like a flute. But the god of panic, that's what I'm talking about here is, see, the pandemic is really a panic-demic. And on the left specifically, they're very much motivated by this because they believe in the scientific paradigm, scientism, and utopianism based on this progressive future. But the right wing obviously rejected this whole thing. But they believe in the old concepts of sin, not this new concept. So they're still motivated by moral panic. So I refer to it as panicdemic and moral panicdemic, left and right, their main motivator. And this is why you consistently see, now it seems to be the trend for alt-right and right wing to be consistently outraged. Outrage is a huge part of their whole thing. Always mad at the left and the left's morals or their various lifestyles, which they see as, of course, quote, sinful. And so they believe that these lifestyles and um, the sinful nature of the left spreads through social contagion. So that it's contagious. So each side fears the other, traditional sin versus the new concept of sin. The reason why the left is sinful is they don't read the Bible and they don't believe in God. The reason why the right wing is infected, which is another way of saying sinful or unsaved, is they don't believe the news and they don't take the injectable Eucharist. Just another example of the split down the middle. Okay, so let's see what else we have here. I'm going through your comments. I want to say thanks for hanging out. It's been 3.5 hours. We had two calls from G33. We had a new caller, Sebastian, who recommended Cunify. I'll be checking out some Cunify content here soon. Kevin Morin says one tower looked like a needle. Oh, look, one thing about the World Trade Tower as well. 1776 feet high. That's obviously a reference to the founding of the Illuminati, the founding of America. But the Tower of Babel's construction began in 1776 AL, the Masonic year. 1776 AD was 5776 AL, which happens to be the height of the Great Pyramid in inches. So the Great Pyramid's height corresponds to the height of the One World Trade Tower in this way and connects it to the Tower of Babel, which of course is America, and of course it's the one world. And one other thing, when you're close up to the One World Trade Tower, like as in looking up at it, and this is, look, we're talking about Masonic architecture, symbolic architecture. It's all in the symbolism. When you're up close to it, it actually looks like a pyramid with a pronounced capstone, just like the dollar bill. This is the World Trade Tower from the bottom, and it's just the way the building's divided. It creates that vision, that view. A few other interesting points here. Well, I don't know. We've already been here for 3.5 hours, but But looking at the architecture of these buildings and the roles they play, I mean, at ground zero, you have the Millennium Hotel, which is based on Space Odyssey 2001 and its monolith. So it's this big monolith looking hotel right there at ground zero overlooking the Twin Towers after they fell. Now look at this. You can't unsee it. The logo of the Hilton. Tell me that's not a plane going into the Twin Towers, or it's rather showing the flight paths and showing how both towers were hit. You can see where they were hit. That's on the Hilton logo. So the connection here is the monolith connects Kubrick to 9/11, just like his movie The Shining does, just like his movie 2001: A Space Odyssey does. Just a further example of meta-scripting and how they write our history decades in advance. 9/11 was conceived of before they even broke ground. The Pentagon's construction began on 9/11, 1940, no, was it 1941? Like 60 years to the day. Dewis in Paris says, talk about a work of art destroying the two towers to meld them together into a modern day pyramid shape. So it's yeah, exactly, a pyramid. Tower of Babel. And you can also correlate this, of course, with the Cathedral of St. John the Divine and its pillars, which has New York represented as Babylon. Joined by Mason Free, says I just made it. Sure, you made it just in time. We're actually about to head out. This is Infinite Plane Saturday. We do this every Saturday. It's open phones. And we will be back tomorrow. You'll be getting archives in your inbox, so subscribe to the newsletter below. We covered a lot of ground. We'll do more tomorrow. Likely same time. So thanks for joining. This is DJ Ready Rel and Milky Smooth Auto Hoax, produced by DJ Ready Rel.
CIA be lurking, I be in the turban. Little ones stay cursing, older ones out twerking. Talking about lack of education, streets are always dangerous. Bluetooth speakers playing, do you really hear what they saying? Do you know what that mean? Are you down for the team? They speak through signs and symbols, you can learn about these things. Live by 9/11, Club of 27. Once you think that they in heaven, nah bruh, it's a legend. It's all according to the code. Damn Illuminati on my mind, body, and my soul. That's why they snatching bodies, everybody in a Holly Grove. Deception is a hobby, switching roles with the auto clone. We call that an auto hoax.
Man, what you trying to prove? Don't you know we've been around the globe and been to the moon?
Get it, that's an auto hoax.
You tripping, times two. What about the shootings that they always cover on the news?
Real, that's an auto hoax.
They don't move, we will make the way. Let it spray, right reality like an AKA. Let them know we don't play. They live like life's a party, but it's really like a breakaway. Meditate, focus your attention on your better days. You know what I'm talking about. Don't let these slimy narcissists, the antichrist out there turn you out. Freedom of speech is actuality. That's why the truth must spread by word of mouth, word of mouth. It's all according to the code. Damn Illuminati with my mind, body, and my soul. That's why they snatching bodies, everybody in the Holly Grove. Deception is a hobby, switching roles with the auto clone. Let me turn on my auto hoax. Not even a proven fact. The floor curves into a spinning ball, and you can test for that.
Globe is an auto hoax.
Man, you must be trolling me. Scientific theories aren't what they are shown to be.
Yup, that's an auto hoax.
So what you're saying is you don't accept the claim that's missing proof, then you label it.
Exactly, it's an auto hoax.
Wow, sports is scripted by the number code. What do I really don't? Let me turn on my auto hoax.
Squad.
Let me turn on my auto hoax and look this stuff up when I get home. Cause boy, I tell you, these kids today is tripping. I ain't tripping, he must be tripping. Cause I am not tripping, not one little bit. I know my things, I know my shit.